Good evening and welcome to this square table. Originally our idea was to have kind of a square table format, so each one has a microphone and each one can talk personally and we have more personalized discussion. We thought there will be about 60, 70 people who will be interested in creativity. It turned out we have about over 138 people. So last night at 11 o'clock we had to change and make it more like round table. So I think we are trying to fix what you call in your language square peg in a round hole. So please pardon us. We have, not been doing exactly what we would otherwise do. But I think next time we'll have a bigger room. Anyway, once again, welcome. It's exciting. We are all here. Before I start anything, this would not have been possible without the support of Nasscom and TIE. When we decided this event to host, it was just about 15 days before, just 15 days ago we did. And I'm sorry, I'm keeping my phone off, but it keeps on popping up. Thank you. That's, sorry, no, just leave it time, because we are almost 10 minutes late, and that's why I'm a bit concerned that, we would not have enough time. But Nasscom and TIE, first of all, let me acknowledge their support, first of all. Naganand, I think, is here, and he can raise his hand. And is it okay? Oh, you're hiding. Okay, thank you especially. Okay, because we must thank first rather than giving vote of thanks. That's why I'm starting with thanks. And what we thought that culture of innovation is the subject that we are discussing, but just not in general. Culture of innovation in Indian setting, in Indian ink. How in India we can nurture innovation. As you all know that we won some Financial Times award on innovations and stuff like that. But the idea was that it is just one experiment. It is not generally, we can talk a lot about innovations, but we thought, what are specific things? How can we share experience? So we are not here to teach or we are talk just, and the concept of square table is more democratized model of conference because everything is converging. The speakers in the audience are the same in many ways. And so we thought, let us share experiences, not only from this side, but also from the other side. In the process, what we would like to do is first to have a little setting from Mr. Srivastava Krishnan. A few words. If you can take about 15 minutes to speak on your thoughts. And to save time, everybody's biography is here. So I would not go into great detail, but one interesting thing, if you look at his profile on page 8, and that is, he topped India 1 out of 500, 500,000, lakhon mein ek bolte hai na. So he's somebody like that in the National Civil Service Examination in 1994. And I have known him for a long time. I would not go into the details because I think we'll end up spending the whole day. You got such a marvelous background behind you. So I think we'll start with inaugural talk from Mr. Srivastava Krishnan. And if I may invite you to talk, you can sit there, you can stand. I'm a standing counsel, so I always keep, and I'm always on the standby. So please, whichever way suits you, it's all freewheeling. And once we finish, we would like to hear from you also. What has been your experience? How many of you are creative, but how you nurture creativity? What kind of problems you have? encountered and so on and so forth. So without much ado, may I request
Thank you.
Srivastava Krishnan to give us a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Nishith. I'm seeing Nishith after 18 years. And I must say, when I first met him, when I was working for Chandrababu Naidu in Andhra Pradesh, what struck me about Nishith was his passion to build a world-class law firm out of India. Many law firms in India are legacy-driven. Kisi ka baap hai, kisi ka beta hai, kisi ka pota hai. He's one of the few who has built a law firm from scratch, done it in one generation, and taken it global. And I think that's something which we all as Indians should be very, very proud of. When I saw him today, after almost 2 decades, it was a very warm feeling. Ladies and gentlemen, I never prepare for a speech. I've just come to speak to you some thoughts on innovation and what we are doing in government. Governments and innovation don't usually go together. Shekhar, Kapur and innovation always go together. So it's a bit of an antithesis to have a Babu who's from the same school as Shekhar Kapur. Both of us went to the best school in the world, and if I have to tell you what that is, Modern School, Barakamba Road, New Delhi. We're both going to speak about innovations from very different perspectives. So innovation for me is doing things very, very differently and distinctively. And how can government get involved in innovation? We are often asked, government comes in the way of innovation. You know, government and innovation are not two. And look at her nodding away very, very happily. And I'm sure at the end of this 15 minutes, a very brief talk, at the end of this 15 minutes, I'll have at least a few heads nodding and saying, yes, government can do and is doing innovation in Karnataka. And if I can achieve that in this audience, I think I've earned my day's bread worth it. Okay? So let me start. What is government doing? Let me start with one piece of data, which should stun you. I was sharing this with Matt Nimitz over lunch today. Are you guys aware there are 3.1 million IT professionals in India? 3.1 million. All IT knowledge industries put together. Out of that, 1.1 million are in this city of Bangalore, making us the second largest IT cluster on the planet after Silicon Valley. And by 2020, we'll overtake Silicon Valley to become the single largest IT cluster on the planet with over 20 lakh or 2 million IT professionals, 60 lakh indirect IT jobs, and 4 lakh crore exports. 4 lakh crore exports, that's 35% of India's software exports coming out of one city, Bangalore. So we are the unquestioned IT capital of the world. I mean, I don't think I need to debate this more, but we are not the innovation capital of the world. We are not the startup capital of the world. And the avowed objective of this government is to ensure that we become that. And here are a few steps we are taking. Along with Nasscom, Ravi, Gururaj, we set up what is called the Startup Warehouse. And those of you who haven't seen it, I urge you to go and see it. It's not very large. It's about 10,000 square feet of space where we have about 140 seats and where we incubate startups every 3 or 4 months. And we've been doing that very successfully. We've just had the first anniversary. And I'm happy to announce that we've decided to now expand that 5x. So you'll be soon seeing a Nasscom, Government of Karnataka's next-gen startup warehouse, which is 50,000 square feet, and which will have the first Internet of Things lab in the country, which will have a design center for design excellence and a mobile technology lab. No other state government, madam, may I have your attention? No other state government in the country, much less the federal, now she's nodding this way. No other state government in the country, much less the federal government, has done this yet. I think if government facilitates innovation, this includes, ability for young startups to come in and use the facility for 1 day. If they want to hire it for half a day, mind you, it's totally free of cost. And government is setting up the infrastructure. We've also reached out to several large companies in the corporate world. I can't name them yet because I know my friends from the press would be somewhere here. Until I don't have everything tied up, I don't want to name them yet. So we have some of the biggest names from the corporate sector partnering with us in creating the labs that I mentioned and the next-gen startup warehouse. That is one part of it. What is the other part of things which in government frustrates all of you? That is government itself. Now, why should the point of decision of a government service and the point of delivery of a government service be at one and the same location? The point of decision of a government service will always be inside government because it's a statutory function. But the point of delivery can be anywhere where we can bury a piece of silicon and a piece of fiber. Government of Karnataka has become the first state in India and the largest in the world mobile governance platform, will be launched in October by the President of India. We have 4,500 services at launch on mobile phones, smartphones which are made by my friend from Sony here, and also on non-smartphones, on small non-feature phones which the Aam Aadmi on the street carries, where with USSD and SMS he can avail of many, not all, government services. So I'm waiting for Ultra Z2 to come so that we can showcase that at our launch as well. And you've still not told me when you're bringing that out. So M-governance, mobile governance, completely separates the point of decision of a government service from the point of delivery. It's anytime, anywhere, anyhow service. You can be sitting on a beach in California and accessing your property tax account in Bangalore or pay your Nasscom bill on the mobile phone. If you want a plumber and want to find one in the middle of the night, all you need to say go is into the Government of Karnataka Mobile One platform and look for a plumber, and you'll have their names and numbers coming into you via SMS in a few seconds. And we have over 4,000 of these services at launch, which makes us the single largest mobile platform in the world. If that isn't innovation, tell me what is. Now she's nodding all the way, only this even before I speak. I'm convincing at least one person in this audience. Okay, let me tell you something else. All of you are Hollywood fans in this room. Matt, do you know where Life of Pi was made? And where was Skyfall made? Where was Sherlock Holmes made? Not in Hollywood. It was not in Hollywood. If you saw the movie Skyfall, the climax scene, the house Skyfall, which is supposed to be in Scotland, which thankfully did not go independent yesterday, was not in Scotland. It was here in Whitefield, down the road, where a group of young techies created Skyfall in a studio in Bangalore called Technicolor, with whom we work with. Life of Pi's famous storm scene, which won the Oscar, was created also in Bangalore, as have been several other movies. So Government of Karnataka is working on a project to see how can we disrupt the Bollywood and the global motion picture industry when it comes to special effects, VFX, animation, and graphics. What is it that the government can provide in terms of infrastructure which would enable young kids, many of these, as Shekhar knows this far better than I do, come together for a movie, for one project, and go away. Those, in fact, I was very happily surprised to find the people who worked with me on this movie called Shanghai, where I happened to sing. The movie Shanghai, many of the technicians who had come together when I was talking to them later have moved off into other projects. So can the government create a platform where young, talented people can come, work on projects in the area of animation, special effects, etc., and go away once their project is done? Why should they invest in server farms? Why should they invest in high-end rendering equipment? I think that is something which the government can do to boost innovation. Startups. This is something very, very close to our heart, and we work very closely with Dr. Sridhar Mitta and Sri Naganand. The government of Karnataka has set up new age incubators in 9 tier 2 cities. And this is again in engineering colleges which have been identified through a World Bank report which listed all the top engineering colleges in the country. And we picked 9 of them outside Bangalore to tap into the talent in tier 2, tier 3 cities and get them into these incubators. If you manage to find one Twitter a year or one Facebook a year, just as Redbus, I don't know how many of you know, Redbus was incubated in Bangalore, in TIE, and was showcased in the Bangalore IT.biz conference, which the government of Karnataka hosts and sponsors 5 years back, and it got sold for $150 million last year. It was set up by a man called Fanindra Sama, who came away from Hyderabad to Bangalore because he saw Bangalore as the startup capital of India and not Hyderabad, and he found all the necessary ingredients for making a startup successful here. So I don't want to take more time, I'd rather spend the time taking your questions. I'm here to just convey a simple message that this government is for innovation. We will do whatever it takes over the next 10 years to make Bangalore the IT, innovation, and startup capitals of the world. We just can't be one and not the other. And this is our avowed mission for which we are working towards. We have a Startup Act in the pipeline, which will take a few more months to come, maybe another 6 months, by which we'll be the first state in India and one of the first few in the world to have a Startup Act which will help young companies like Shekhar's, which got incubated in Bangalore as well, to thrive and grow in this city, and this city should become the preferred location for startups and for innovation. I want to just end with one thought. You know, when we are approached by people in the private sector, many of whom are clients of all of you, the standard refrain I find from the private sector is, I have a box, my box is better than his box, my box is faster than his box, my box is cheaper than his box, this is what I call innovation, and please buy my box and make it work somewhere in your system. I'm not looking for solutions in search of problems. I'm looking for very, very unique solutions to the very complex problems which government alone is the home of. And having worked both in the private sector and in the government, let me tell you, by an order of magnitude, the private sector getting things done is a walk in the park. And getting things done in this system is infinitely harder than you can ever imagine, given all the complex workings of our democracy. So what I want all of you to tell me is, how can all of you collaborate with us in the government? And we have an absolutely open system. Anyone wants to come and help us solving any specific problem, either on the mobile platform or on Bangalore One, Karnataka One, or through any other way. We have an e-procurement platform which does $15 billion worth of business every year. 15 billion, that's 80% of government of Karnataka's annual procurement, every single year. And it's end-to-end. We have contract management, catalog management, and we are considered to be one of the best in the country, if not the best, with several states having reached out to us to replicate the same. So if any of you want to come forward, I invite you to come forward, engage with us, tell us ways in which you can help us solve problems. I'm not here to tell you that I have answers to all the problems, I don't. Which is why this is something we have to do as a team together. And I urge all of you to come forward, help us with those pressing, vexatious problems to which none of us individually have answers, but all of us probably collectively shall do. Thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to take questions.
How the government is really helping entrepreneurs in easing the process of setting up entrepreneurship ventures, because there's so much of regulatory hassles with the new companies bill as well. I think most entrepreneurs, including filing for IPs, as an MSME, there's no grants or anything that is allowed for startups here in Bangalore.
So two things. One is there's a set of things which come under Government of India, like registration of companies, and we are working with them to try and find solutions to that. It's not something directly with us. The things which the Government of India can do, I've had sessions with the startups in Nasscom, in the startup warehouse, where they've given us some ideas. When the Startup Act comes, which is what I spoke about, that is one big step forward in debottlenecking. There are many things which a startup need not do. And there's no reason why it should be subjected to every archaic, pre-British, pre-Jurassic era law, just because the law exists or because someone wants to take a bribe. So we just give us some time. We are working through it. We will, hopefully in 6 months from now, have a brand new Startup Act which will debottleneck and make it easier for startups to start here. Thank you. Sorry. For the state laws, yes, it will be state specific. Which is why we want you to come here and not go into another state. You think I'm going to write a law for Andhra Pradesh?
He did it already.
That we've done, been there, done that. Any other questions, please? Yeah. There's one question here. You mean all my predecessors were Canada? I don't buy that.
Hi,
I'm a
this
little
is
more candid than others. Yes,
Cyril Desai from Nishith Desai. My question would be, which jobs would be killed because of innovation?
which jobs would be?
Disappearing or get disrupted
Well, I
because
certainly
of
hope the
innovation.
IAS doesn't disappear. I won't have a salary to go back home to. Which jobs? See, I don't see it as a job disappearing. I think there'll be jobs which get restructured. Tell me one job which has disappeared in the last 10 years, including a photocopy operators, still exists. We may not call him that, we may call him something else, some fancy name. Or the machine would have become better, whether you don't need an operator running through it every time, you may become less. I don't think jobs are going to disappear. I think a lot of them, the whole skilling initiative which we are doing is towards ensuring that people who come out of one set of skills can get reskilled for adapting in the new innovation economy. We are working very closely with Nasscom on that as well. And that is something, again, which you will see shortly. Thank you very much for your time. Very grateful. Thanks a lot.
That was wonderful. I think you often don't expect government to be innovative, I think. Just as lawyers, of course, we are not expected to be innovative anyway. And one interesting statistic that has come out recently is that the company incorporation has gone down by half this year. You know, that is something a matter of great concern. So we need to really quickly revisit our company's law. And one important practice which we used to follow at one point of time has been given up, and that is to form law commission for important laws to come in to the country. So that was a very good practice where you have judges, lawyers, accountants, industry experts. They are all sitting together and developing a law so they know. In countries like Scandinavia, in fact, behavioral scientists and also sociologists, they also participate very heavily because every law has its own implication. And that is the practice we have gone up. And you can see such a mess that has happened in corporate law, unfortunately. You know, it intended very good things, but came out something different. Same thing happened with direct access code. No law commission was set up, and therefore at the end of the day we got something which is troublesome. But we won't spend too much time at this point in time. We should do something together and see that our laws are well articulated so that people can understand what the law is. All that is needed is writing, and writing them well so that people can decide their behavior decisions. I think we are all waiting to hear you, Shekhar. Do you really need introduction? If I introduce you, maybe that's belittling you. But everybody knows him as the most prominent figure in the entertainment sector, but he also has a technology company. Yeah. So Shekhar, would you like to come?
I thought this was going to be a question and answer session, but anyway.
That's what I was
So
Shekhar.
please ask me any question that you would like, and that'll provoke me to give you an answer that might. You see, the great thing about being a filmmaker is I can peek in the future, and nobody can question me because I'll say it's the future. And when I started my technology company, I walked into Cisco and I said, 10 years down the line, this is what's going to happen. And I must have told a very good story, because they called me and said, oh, we'd like to invest in your company. So 6 of them called me. I was sitting in my balcony in my pajamas in Mumbai, and they said, I'm so-and-so from San Jose, I'm the VP and so-and-so, and I'm from Atlanta, I'm so-and-so. Can you introduce us to your team? And I said, you're talking to the team. And that's how the company formed, because there was an idea. So innovation is not jugaad. Innovation is not something that you do. Innovation is an emotion. Innovation is a story. And I believe that every time that what you do is you tell yourself a story, and a story comes out of a fundamental dissatisfaction with the way your life is, the way the life is around you, or just a state of incredible rebellion. Innovation is rebellion. That's why sometimes it gets tough in big corporate companies. That's why it gets tough in corporations. But that's about to change, and I'll tell you why. So innovation is something that you aspire to. Innovation is a story that you tell yourself. Innovation is an idea, and an innovation ideas always get rejected. Always, always. I've never, ever seen an innovation idea that gets picked up like that. So often we will tell stories, and we will tell many, many stories. And in telling the stories, we get our innovation pitch right too. And then you just move it towards where you are. You said, Nishith, that is the corporations. Actually, the greatest innovation that's going to happen is the structure of corporations. Because one thing that's happening is that social media and technology is sucking inertia out of the system. And any structure that lasts as long as and as comfortably as it can, because there's inertia in the system. And if you start to suck inertia out of the system, how will a corporation last? And I've been dealing with that question and talking to a lot of people. Corporations themselves, not only in the product that they make, but in how they survive in the future, will have to find ways of constantly reinventing themselves. Not once in 10 years, not once in 5 years, but almost every day. Because every day, stuff is changing. Every day, the world is changing. And as if every day the world changes, it's... Okay, let me try and describe it to you. If you look at the ocean, and the ocean has got waves like that, and I say, look at the wave, what's the name of that? And by the time I say that, the wave's gone. I say, I don't know, the wave's gone. Now, I'm a filmmaker. I'll take a camera that runs at 10,000 frames a second, and the wave will go like that, right? And then there'll be a peak, and there'll be a trough. And you can literally see the battle between the peak and the trough. The trough wants to go into the peak, and it wants to pull the peak down to the trough. But why can't you see it? You can't see it because I've injected inertia into the system. It's slower. I've often thought when people paid with stock exchange 100 years ago and suddenly came today to try and deal in the stock exchange, they say, we can't deal with it, it's completely chaotic. It's not chaotic. What we see often as chaos is only the sucking of inertia out. My daughter, who's 14, will not see the world as chaotic. I sometimes see it as chaotic. So I wondered what organizations are going to be like. Organizations will have to be innovative, rather like as, I know, how many of you did clay modeling when you were in school? Oh, right, okay. And the wheel goes round, you have clay. And as little kids, you go and you keep changing the shape. And I suspect that that's how organizations are going to be. You're going to be like clay, and you're going to keep changing the shape every day because it has to keep responding to changes in technology, changes in ideas. And, you know, I watch it in my own system. One of the reasons I got into social media is because I was so afraid that I was about to become a dinosaur as a filmmaker. I kind of looked in the future and said, who's going to go see a 3-hour film? Who's going to see a 2-hour film? Who's going to see a 1-hour film? And who's going to see a film that's not interactive? And who's going to want to sit there and say, oh my God, there he goes again? And I remember 10 years ago, we did a digital film festival. And we invited people from all over the world. This was in Delhi. And we thought that when we have the professionals and filmmakers, famous filmmakers from all over the world, people will come and see it. They didn't. They just saw it and went away. Then we had the amateurs. And the only thing about an amateur was you are not allowed. You have never made a film before. Make a film and give it. They're 1-minute films, 30-minute films, 1-hour films. Some of the worst films I've ever seen. Terrible. But that house, that hall was full, and everybody was cheering. Everybody was cheering, and I was scratching my head and saying, why are they cheering at such bad cinema? And I saw the rise of social media. That's what was happening. Communities were forming. And I thought, if I am not part of a community formation, I cannot remain an icon, because the icons will be pulled down, and social media will be pulling icons down, and that's what's going to happen everywhere. So there is coming up, for anybody who's innovative here, there is a 12-year-old boy who's a little more innovative than you are, because the children are born with an innovative ideas. They're born with a mindset and an emotion that is rebellious. So, what do? Go back to being a child? Yeah. I tell all my assistants who are working very hard, and they say, what should we do? I said, daydream. What do you mean, daydream? I said, just go sit there and daydream, or walk around daydream, because daydreaming is a hugely innovative idea. It's when you get all your ideas. And if your boss is telling you that what are you doing, you're just daydreaming, that's like, tell him or tell her, no, this is where my best innovative ideas come. So I can go on talking about this, but I will take questions before I go on. If there's any question here, challenge me. Yes, I'm willing. Come on. No? Yes.
My name is Sriram, and I'm an entrepreneur. And what I was saying is one side of innovation is disruption. And we have seen a lot of disruption in the entertainment industry in the West, with Netflix making TV serials and stuff like that. Where do you see the disruption happening in the Indian entertainment industry? And which parts would you think will vanish in the next 7 to 10 years?
That's an easy one, because I know this industry so well. You should challenge me on industries I don't know. But because the ideas are the same in every industry. We have 16,000 theaters, 16,000 or 15,000 screens, servicing 4 languages, servicing about 600 films a year. You can already see where the disruption will happen. We have 800 million cell phone connections, right? In 800 million cell phone connections, once the 4Gs are out, and the creation and the move over to smartphones is becoming so fast. Because smartphones you can get for 3,000 rupees. The Chinese imports that are 3,000 rupees. So as the smartphone goes up, where will I show my film? 16,000 theaters, out of which I fight for and pay heavily for, or 800 million cell phones? Once 4G is out, I can stream my movie, my stories. Well, let's forget movies. We're storytellers. I want people to listen to my story. I tell stories on Twitter in 140 letters, and people respond like that. I get 100 response if it's good. I get no response if it's bad. I know straight away, is my story good, is it bad? I don't have to wait a year and a half to see a film release. It's that instant. That's why I'm saying it's all going to change, because we're sucking inertia out of the system. But you can make your film, and you can beam it, stream it to 800 million people at the same time. How much do I need to charge them to make a $100 million film? 5 rupees, if they all see it. 10 rupees if half of them see it. So, and right now, people are paying 20 rupees for a film, downloading or streaming a film. Streaming is not very good, but they download it. So where is the change coming? I'm going to be telling stories for a different medium. All right? So YouTube is defunct, really, in that sense. Okay? So each time Facebook is coming up with its own thing, YouTube is going to kill television. Streaming live videos, that people can stream live videos. Now then YouTube will have to stream live, because one of the things that happens in content is that as we go on with social media, content has very little shelf life. Gone with the Wind still has shelf life. Can you tell me any video that still has shelf life? It's gone. And so you have to keep creating content. It's like a big dragon that keeps devouring. And so jobs will create 1 million new jobs. So yeah, that's the big disruption coming in entertainment.
What I'm really looking for is, how do you build culture of innovation and build culture of innovation in India Inc., where we are very used to services, and then how do you take it to the next level? And some ideas like that, I'm sure some of you have lots of experience to share. But Shekhar, I wanted you to take a little rest also, therefore I thought maybe you could sit down. You've been working very hard. We are working on a very big project in LA, on which I will talk to you slightly later on. But what I would like to do, I think we have an excellent panel here, and all their bios are in the booklet. And what I would like to do is to start with Matt Nimitz. He, apart from other things, he's also on the board of trusted advisors, but he has tremendous experience in the private equity space. Prior to that, he was chairman of a law firm called Paul Weiss, and he has been a diplomat and stuff like that. But having seen a number of companies from close quarters, my first question, Matt, to you is that what role innovation plays in companies' success, if you have some thoughts on that. And maybe anybody can, for the talk, you can use whichever one.
I'll sit, okay? How about that? So a couple words about companies and innovation, and having been an investor in many companies in India, but also around the world and in the US, and having served in different roles. Companies don't survive very long in general. I mean, the average period of a company, even an S&P 100 company, is very, very short. I think there are only about 3 or 4 companies that have been on the S&P index for more than 50, 75 years. So change is so dramatic, and those of us who invest pay a lot of attention to whether a company is one that is going to survive. And survival means constant change within the company. So I have a few ideas to just throw out to you very, very quickly. One is the commitment of the people at the top of a company. And I think in India, this is extremely important, because most companies in India are not very innovative. And we're in Bangalore here, which is the center of innovation. But if you look at India generally, most companies don't have this sense of constant change. So you need inspiration from the top. And the board of directors and the chief executive have to be constantly pushing downward to innovate. This means taking a risk of lack of respect. right? Because to innovate within a company means to make changes, and the changes usually involve having some people less important than they were before. Someone asked earlier whether people lose jobs. Well, people don't necessarily lose jobs, but they lose their role, they lose their importance if there's creative innovation. Because we were talking so much about IT, I think that India's companies in IT are pretty innovative, but IT is still a small part of the Indian economy, and the places where there's very little innovation up to now is in other areas, other sectors. So the manufacturing sector, the agricultural sector, the retail sector, the energy sector, these are huge areas. Take retail in America. I think McKinsey said that the most innovative change in American companies in the last 20, 30 years was Walmart. Not everything in Silicon Valley, but what Walmart did in terms of transforming retailing and changing methodology of sending inventory and delivery systems. If you take manufacturing, the Japanese, I think, were the most innovative in just-in-time delivery of supplies and knocking out all inventories by very, very rapid and very precise type of deliveries of equipment and supplies. So at agriculture, we did have the Green Revolution about 40, 50 years ago. We've had genetic engineering, which is very controversial, but it's very innovative. We have farming, fish farming, which is feeding a fantastic number of people, which is a total innovation in food supply. There are a lot of areas of innovation in major, major sectors, but it requires people in companies to say, let's look at something different. Let's bring in some new people into the company. Let's have a retreat where we're all going to sit around and see whether we can do something different. Let me just end up with a couple of statistics that I dug out because I like metrics. And I looked up this one statistic. What percentage of GDP is devoted to R&D? In other words, you take a country, you say GDP is a certain amount. What percentage is in R&D? And what country do you think has the highest percentage of its GDP in research and development? What? Israel. Israel has the highest percentage of GDP devoted to R&D. Number 2, Sweden. Number 3, Finland. Japan, Switzerland. U.S. number 6. Still pretty good because we're a big country, but the percentage of R&D out of GDP. So where is India in this? Among the BRICS, well, U.S. was number 6, I said. Russia is number 22. China is number 26. Brazil number 31. And India 38. So India has the lowest percentage of GDP devoted to research and development on an aggregate basis. And not thinking you have to compete with Switzerland and Finland and Israel, but you're not even competing actually very well with Russia or China in terms of that. So that's something where you just have to change the amount of corporate, private sector, and public sector resources that go into R&D, because that's aggregate stuff. And out of that R&D will come innovation. The last piece of metric is patents filed. So I always look, when I look at a country, and I say, how many patents filed from that country in the U.S.? There's also national and there's international, but if a patent is worthwhile, you're going to file it in the U.S. So U.S. patents are 133,000. Japan is next, 52,000. Taiwan 11,000, China 6,000. So Taiwan has double the number of patents that China has. China has 6,000. India has 2,400. So Japan 52,000, India 2,400. Pakistan only 12 patents filed. This is, I think, 2012. There's just no innovation. There's very, very little innovation in terms of patent ability. So this is where you need a lot of resources, engineers, and people doing creative research, research institutes, universities. And you look in the U.S. at where our development occurred, it's usually around universities. So the reason for Silicon Valley is Stanford and Berkeley. The reason for Boston being a center of so many computer companies, it's MIT and Harvard. Austin, Texas as well. Sorry, it's not too long.
Sorry.
Yeah. So,
I don't want to be rude, but I think you give statistics, I think that really tells a story, that nation really will work on that. And I would love to have some reactions on this subject as to, how do you think that the innovation plays what kind of role? And I want to take this discussion further. But before that, Krishna, you have to leave. Really, Indian Standard Time may help us. And we would love to have a little more here. How much can you stretch?
By working in government for one day, you will realize what innovation and jugaad is all about.
And
24/7, 365 all the time.
Exactly. I think
To
you have
stay
one
afloat and
government.
alive.
No, there is one government which has really done wonderful job. So I just wanted your presence for a little more time. Whatever little you can extend, stretch a little bit, we won't.
It is going to be the last one going into that meeting. So I'll stay for another 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. I really appreciate that because I think we really want to have this little discussion going. But would you like to comment on this particular subject, that what role innovation plays in company success? And maybe other related question is that, do you think entrepreneurs in India have adapted to the innovations, and to what extent today? How do you see where we are in terms of the mindset? So maybe I'll start with you.
Sorry, what was the second one? Entrepreneurs?
What kind of role innovation plays, in a company's, success or otherwise?
So let me again talk about the IT industry. The global IT spend last year was 2.2 trillion. That's the global total IT spend in the world. And what's the size of the Indian IT industry? 118 billion. 118 billion, that's his number, not mine. The man sitting right here, Ashok Pamidi, Nasscom. So blame them if it's wrong. 2.2 trillion global spend in IT, and IT being a very large driver of innovation and technology, out of which India has only scratched the surface. 118 billion. Break down that 118 billion further. Domestic market, 30 billion. And the rest is all overseas. And of the 30 billion, how much is government? 3 billion. 3 billion. So what bothers me is while the private sector comes to the government in a reactive mode, when we put out a bid for some large network or some database, they show up to bid for it. Why can't private sector companies come to us proactively with solutions for problems which they and us face all the time together? Why should I have to always, find them coming only when there's something going out from us? I'm absolutely open and happy. I'll give you one example. We are working, and we have developed a solution. I don't want to talk about it here because we'll take the bang out of our launch. We've worked with the corporate sector, with one of the leading companies, a startup, to create an app for you, which if in Bangalore you find there's a street light which doesn't work, go take a picture of the street light and just press a button. It'll have the app will have intelligence in it to take the picture to the concerned executive engineer and to his boss and his boss. If they don't act on it, it'll come up as red flags in the inbox of higher and higher authorities. If they act on it, then the engineer takes a picture of the repaired light and it goes back onto a portal where citizens can see it. Innovation for you in government?
Wonderful.
Somebody said Karnataka government doesn't innovate? You can use that for potholes too. No, you can use that. Man, look at it. It is for potholes too. It is for water, electricity, potholes. See, look at it this way. Today there is, in our democracy, there is asymmetric pressure. What do I mean by asymmetric pressure? There are potholes all over the city, right? There are electricity poles not working in all parts of the city, but only a few get fixed and others don't. Why is that? You have a corporator or an MLA or a minister putting pressure on an engineer and saying, go, ye hamara aadmi hai, iska karo. Right? And there's a whole swath of places where nothing gets done. What will this app do? This app is not miraculously going to cure all the electricity and pothole problems of Bangalore, far from it. But it will expose and bring out to the forefront where exactly are the actual problems. Is the money going to them or going somewhere else? And if it's going somewhere else, is it going to solving a problem or is it going into someone's pocket? And that kind of sustained, verifiable, both important words, sustained, verifiable public pressure on the government will very soon bring about transformational change. He talked of structures. I just want to say one word of structures. And this is what I started by saying, that our government and any government in India works totally on jugaad. You know, it's not you thought we are a test match. It's not even a one-day match. It's not even a T20. It's a 5-over match. And you have to survive it. You never know where the bouncer is going to come from, or a beamer for that matter, and who it will come from. It may come from your own, runner sitting on the other side of the wicket could throw a beamer at you, which can happen only in government in India. So, organizational structures, I think, in government are completely silo-based, with a few exceptions. Our decision-making is completely sequential. What we are trying to do in a small way in our department, and hopefully it will spread to others as well, is to get rid of this culture of sequential decisions, where I send a file to law sends it to finance sends it to somebody else, then it comes back, somebody objects, he sends it again back, this merry-go-round keeps going around, pass the buck, don't sign the file as long as you can. We're trying to change that by bringing in not sequential decision-making, but parallel decision-making, having all the concerned people in one room as often as possible and hammer out a solution. There's something famous thing called standing orders of labor. All those in the IT industry know about it. Standing orders of labor meant every labor inspector could visit any IT industry here and demand a bribe or arrest someone, and there were, by the way, arrest warrants out against some of the greatest worthies of the IT industries of the city for non-compliance. We had that order, we had the standing orders of labor repealed for 5 years from April 1st of this year. We were the first state to do so in 1998, then we fell back, and we've now again repealed it for 5 years. How? By getting rid of sequential decision-making, having everyone in the room. I locked people in a room, refused to let them go out till we came to a decision. It was a bit of dadagiri, a bit of gundagardi, but we had to do it. At the end of the day, the IT industry got what it wanted, which was 5 years freedom from labor laws. So I'll stop here with one question to Shekhar. I don't know, what kind of questions are you asking? When is Pani releasing? Yeah, I'm only concerned about that. And am I singing in it or not? The whole of India is waiting for Mr. India to launch Pani. Innovation.
You're going to sing in it, and when you get enough innovation in your visual effects things, I will launch Pani, because it's like a city of the future. Okay? So we'll come here to do it.
Krishna, your mehnat will not go in Pani.
Sorry? No.
It will go in.
I mean,
Anyway.
If you could do Life of Pi here, then we could probably do Pani here. Yeah.
No, I think absolutely innovation can cut across every sector. It's, of course, technology is most well known for that, but like government. Only when you listen to people like Krishna, you realize that it can happen anywhere in any space. Even as a law firm, for example, one of the reasons why we are awarded by Financial Times the most innovative law firm in whole of Asia, including China, Australia. When I look back and when I built the law firm model 25 years ago, two things came to my mind. Our law firm model is so skewed and so stupid, we fool everybody in the world because we spend more time doing a project, we put more people on a project, we are more rewarded. But if we spend less time, of course, create value, but people will not pay us the fees. So the whole model has to be reversed. I should be spending less time and charging you more. You'll be happy if I create value at the end of the day. I think that was one, and our law firm has become now in a case study. It is there on your desk. Second thing we did, we spent over almost 40% of our time on research, academics, thought leadership, and stuff like that. The way in which we looked at was how do we complement the future? Our philosophy is that every new technology, every new business model, every new financial instrument brings along with it a new legal or tax problem. Okay? So what we do, we have a systematic process of what we call anticipate, prepare, and deliver. We look at 5, 10, 15 years ahead of time and see what are the new developments that are going to happen, Wi-Fi, WiMAX, quantum computing, fuel cells, Internet of Things. Some of the papers are already here. And we visualize what legal problems will arise. Bitcoins, for example, is a major specialization for us because we think it will be disruptive technology over a period of next 5, 10 years. So what we do is to look at those ones, do research ahead of time, and prepare a lot of papers. When actual situation arrives, we are ready. So if you look at in Asia, out of about, when we did transactions, 8 of our transactions were found to be the most innovative transaction in the world. Okay. The only reason we could do some of these things because of the research. Every morning we have a continuing education program for an hour and a half, management and also technical training. And in that, what we do is to focus on vertical specialty, which gives a technical skill, but liberal arts and lateral thinking is a very critical part to become creative. If you're only vertical thinker, it would not. But you are lateral thinker, liberal arts thinker, it makes a lot of difference for which we have lost some value. So we create that kind of model, and of course, our rule in the morning is that if you're 1 minute late, it is considered half-day leave. Because what we found in India was people were very creative, but were not disciplined. So our challenge is to combine creativity with discipline. Creativity of Silicon Valley and discipline of Singapore. Singapore is struggling today to find creative people because everything is so structured, but they could not. So we have to combine. If we can combine that, probably we'll be there somewhere, So if some of you want to discuss this issue, I'll be always happy to talk beyond law. Okay, I won't take too much time at this point in time, but maybe I would also like to go to Shekhar, and you think innovation is very hard, or it's something that can be nurtured, or it can it can be brought about? Can you make people think creatively, or?
I think people think creatively from the time they were born. I think that people tell stories. We understand our lives through the stories. Nobody understands. The human mind can't comprehend data. The human mind, if you give the human mind data, it turns data into a story and the story into an emotion. Or it understands rhythms. That's why all our old Pranas and all our Mahabharata and all the Gita was told in rhythm, so that you could memorize rhythm. So rhythm and that. But I think we are born innovative. We are born rebellious. We are born storytelling. And somewhere our educational system sucks it out. And we are sucked dry by our educational system, by our professional systems, by everything. We just suck dry. So I think we are born creative. We have to find ways to bring that creativity and innovation back in our education system and the way we deal with people in corporations. The hierarchical system of corporations is completely anti-innovative, and it's because it just becomes jugaad then.
So I think anyone can be creative. That's as simple as that. Yeah. Really speaking, we just need to create that environment and encourage whenever somebody talks stupid, I think we should try to think that he makes sense somewhere on the line or not. So we should begin to respect any idea. Nothing is stupid. We are taught otherwise many a times in India.
Sorry, there's another word for innovation and creativity is fearlessness. And if you don't allow people in a room to be stupid and to not fear being stupid, you will have no innovation. Most ideas, greatest ideas in the world must have sounded extremely stupid when they first came out.
Ravi, maybe can I ask you a question here? As a nation, something you think, everybody knows Ravi, Nasscom, and maybe as an industry, you'll have a bigger perspective. As a country, do you think something needs to be done to build a culture of innovation?
That would have been a good question for Shekhar, I guess. He's on the Prime Minister's Innovation Council. But nevertheless, let me try and answer it in kind of a framing of how I think about innovation and how we could tackle it. If you think of a weather system, we can control the environment in this room, and that's what corporations tend to do. They tend to be small. You can turn the thermostat up and down. You have a known budget. There's a weather pattern in Bangalore, and Secretary Krishna is trying to control that. And in the country we have climate, right? And so really what we need to do is create a climate of innovation, and that requires thought process that span India. I think it requires at least 2 E's: education and entrepreneurship, and the third E to add is e-gov.
Yeah.
If you can add those 3 E's, you will get innovation. I think you cannot manufacture innovation. Innovation is hard. There's a free rider problem inherent in building innovation systems, which is you have to educate the child up front. Somebody has to pay for that. You have to create processes that get that child from there to past IIT and whatever you're doing, that journey. And then only do you realize possibly somebody who's going to create innovation, right? So there's a series of investments that need to be made along the way. So there's no tangible ROI immediately. If you're expecting that, it's not going to work. And most of the systems we put in place, we try to measure. Even patents and all are sometimes misguiding, right? They don't measure the right thing. So I think there's a problem inherent in the way we educate our young now. If anybody in the room thinks our education system is going to look the same 25 years from now, put up your hand. It's going to look dramatically different. Yep. But why aren't we fixing that today? Yep. What are we waiting for? It's not going to be some smartphone and Google glasses that we're going to wear that's necessary.
Actually, it is. Because what social media is doing and access to information is doing is kids are now rebelling against their teachers.
Good.
And so they are talking. And in fact, there's something about innovation that we assume, in fact, everybody here is assuming that innovation is top-down. Actually, what social media is doing is it's going to become bottoms-up, and we won't even recognize it. And that's the shifting sand underneath our feet.
Absolutely.
It's just going bottoms-up. Yeah. Because people are talking to each other rather than talking up and then talking down. So there's a whole movement going out at the bottom of the pyramid.
But Shekhar, we're stifling, all kinds of things.
Of course we are.
We're kind of hostage to legacy, right? In the way are we educated, the way we...
Oh, completely.
And entrepreneurship is even more stifled.
It's left behind.
All the questions that have come up, even the question that was asked, it's very hard to set up a company to innovate, to go to raise capital. All of that has to be freed up. And then you get innovation as a result. Yeah. You don't get it because there's an innovation policy, for sure.
No, agreed.
I think that's absolutely right. In fact, as a country, we also worked on Aadhaar, Yep. And Shrikant, you've been the head of Khosla Labs now, but in the earlier avatar, you were responsible for implementing Aadhaar card. And, how did it all came about, and what do you think that, has it done for the country, and how it should be unfolding itself? But what is your experience? How did you get into that, and how government looked at it? Of course, I would like to open up later on to the audience for a lot more interaction, but let me just get over the first round here.
Well, it started with an effort that Nandan Nilekani and I did earlier called the E-Governments Foundation, which was basically to build a suite of products to run cities better. municipalities better, and today eGov products run in about 275 cities across the country. One of the modules happened to be a birth and death registration and certification module. And we realized that if perhaps a unique number is assigned to people, then perhaps that number, if it's available since birth, then it can be used in various systems, and perhaps the government can deliver better services because they understand the citizenry better. So that was sort of the germ of the idea. But when we dug a little deeper, we found that various schemes of the government, the Indian government spends about 300,000 crore rupees in benefit schemes, and many of them have huge leakages. In fact, Planning Commission's own figures say that the PDS is running at about 40 to 50% efficiency, which means half the money is not going to where it is supposed to go. So if you want to make a large difference in many of the schemes, and if you want to ensure that actually the monies are going where it ought to go, there are two fundamental problems that you will see. One is that of duplication. For instance, in many states, I won't name them, there are more ration cards than there are families. And in fact, in spite of that, in the same state, the people who deserve the ration cards don't have them as well, right? So there are omissions as well. So you see these problems where people are taking more than they ought to. Many of us have multiple cylinders and so on when we ought to take one. So those kinds of problems exist on one side from the citizen's perspective, and on the other side from the administrator's perspective, you find problems of fudging numbers at the lower levels. So there are a large amount of leakages, and in fact one Prime Minister said it's 15 paisa of every rupee actually reaches the intended party at the local level. So how do you get it to, let's say, 95%? The only way you can do it is if you can track the monies that go all the way down to the last person. Not to the district, not to the taluk, not to the state, but to the person. If you are able to do that, then you can figure out whether the money actually reached the person. So that was the idea behind Aadhaar, and the idea was to deduplicate and create a unique database with only one ID per person. And of course, we do a tremendous amount of work to do that. We do about 900 trillion biometric matches every day at a location here in Bangalore to achieve about 1 million Aadhaars every day. But what that does is perhaps a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the country to create a completely clean database where there's only one number per person, where you can't use fake identities and use up more than you deserve in the system. So that was the way we started, and thanks to the new government, the Prime Minister Modi has announced a couple of large schemes. One is the 300 district DBT, the Direct Benefit Transfer Scheme, which can, I think, transform the country because monies can be tracked accurately, and he's in fact made it Aadhaar as one of the key parts of that initiative. The second is the Jan Dhan Yojana, which is the financial inclusion program to ensure that 50% the problem is 50% of the Indians don't have bank accounts. They don't have access to savings, they don't have access to credit. They can't even put their money away in a safe place. I mean, we went and met a lot of people when we were designing part of this system at Aadhaar, the financial inclusion pieces of micro ATMs and other payment bridge. And we found that it is really pathetic, the problems that people face. Yeah. So these were, some of the applications of the system that we designed.
Thank you.
Coastal Labs was started a couple of years ago. Vinod Khosla and I started this incubator, and I was really keen on trying to build software companies that would, do transformational work in India. And one of the areas that we were really passionate about was financial inclusion. So the first company that we started is a company called NovoPay, which does mobile payments and banking. So today, when you have a laborer working in NREGA, for instance, the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, to get his payment, he has to go sometimes 20, 30 kilometers away. And in doing so, he loses about 28% of his income. Can you imagine, take your paycheck and take out a third of it because you have to go collect it. That's really what a large number of 38 million families are facing today in the country, right? They lose a third of their income. So we built a company based on basically an application running on a mobile phone with a biometric scanner, and this can be sitting in a village in the boonies, and that little kirana shop that runs this device becomes a bank, becomes your local bank. And today we have about 100 such centers across the country where we have launched this. And you throw a stone in any direction, you'll hit a guy without a bank account. In the places we are right now going. These are little busties, they're rural areas and so on. And what you find is people are depositing money. The banks in the old BC model did not make money. So financial inclusion was not viable. But if you take this footprint of a low-cost device, completely mobile-based, very low infrastructure, a kirana chap runs your bank, suddenly it becomes affordable. The bank makes money, the BC agent makes money. People are happy because they are able to withdraw their money in their own village instead of going 30 kilometers away. So that's the first company we are building, and that's very exciting. There are other areas we're looking at. Other applications is something that we are really keen about. So we're actually trying to see where are the various places in which other biometric authentication and eKYC can be used. And we're finding a lot of very interesting ideas around that. The third area which I find really exciting references something Shekhar talked about. Human beings are good at learning. Babies, when they're born, the neurons are able to start learning things, whereas machines are pretty dumb. They don't learn anything. They're good at doing repetitive tasks when told precisely how to do them. But there's a new technology, new area called machine learning that's coming up, where we're teaching machines how to learn. So if you show a car, if you show 2,000 cars to a machine, can it tell you that that object is a car, instead of actually describing a car as one with 4 wheels and a glass and a steering wheel and so on? Can you just ask it to learn? And today there are new technologies that are able to do it. I mean, the ways in which you would see it are when you type a search text on Google, it guesses what you are trying to ask, and very often it's right on. Even before you've asked it, it knows what you're asking. How does it know that? That's because it has learned your behavior as well as the behavior of millions and billions of people, so it's able to guess what you're doing, and nobody's gone and told it how to do it. It's learning. So there's a huge potential in using that, because India is big data, whatever you do, okay? And if you have enough data and machines can learn, they can actually solve some of these problems that we're facing. So that's another area. So I think
somebody must have come up with a stupid idea to talk to car, and you have innovation there. So when people do stupid things, I think, Shekhar, you mentioned that we should respect them, right? And
well, absolutely.
Anyway, we did very stupid thing in this brochure that, you're heading Khosla Labs, and we described you in this as the managing director and CEO of ICICI Ventures. And I'm sure that this previous conversation will allow us to get some pardon from you, but thank you so much in such an interesting talk. Thanks. So I think next question, I think to Vivek, I'll ask you, maybe one more for Vaibhav, and then I think I would like to have some stories from you that how some of you inculcated culture of innovation, if there is, some experience of that type. So, Ravi, I think Vivek, sorry. Vivek, you've been chairman of Exec and on the board of several not-for-profit and for-profit organizations, including Innovatia, Janagraha, I Paid Bribe, and Dream a Dream. Already innovation word is in your DNA. And what I would like to understand is, how do you institutionalize innovation in your organization?
Yeah, let me talk about institutionalizing innovation, which will contradict some of the comments made earlier, that innovation is intuitive, innovation is something that people are born with. I strongly believe innovation is a skill that can be learned with proper practice, and provided a proper environment, innovation can happen, and I have data to back that up. So first question I have from audience is, how many of you truly believe innovation is absolutely critical for your organization? Raise your hands, please. Almost everyone. How many of you, and you have company from Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker says any business that does not learn how to innovate will not be there for too long. It doesn't matter what that business is, whether it's technology or not. So you have company of Peter Drucker there. Now let me ask you second question then. How many of your organizations have CIOs? Just one person has CIO? Two? Here the CIO I am talking about is Chief Innovation Officer. Or let me ask, since nobody really has, one or two hands come up, how many of you have companies where a senior leader in the company is spending more than 10-15% of their time in creating the culture of innovation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 out of 100 people. Not even 10% people are investing. You yourself said 100% that innovation is critical to our success, and then 10% people raise hands saying that either I have a chief innovation officer or any senior leader in the organization is committed to innovation for more than 10% of their time. Doesn't match. And this does not match because there are a lot of myths about this. And the myths are that innovation can be done in a startup only. A startup is a very innovative idea, no question, a way of starting a company. So innovation in a startup is very, very welcome and great thing to have. But large amount of innovation still comes from established companies. Bell Labs, IBM Labs, HP Labs, Cisco, R&D departments. So they are producing very, very large percentage of your patents and innovation still. So let me talk and focus on that part of innovation that each one of you can put in your own company. And that is very, very important. So startup is not the only place to innovate. You don't have to go somewhere to actually innovate. You don't have to be in R&D group of your company to innovate. Frankly, in any role, any job, you can innovate. And you better innovate because everything is changing, not just one piece of technology that is changing. Every part of your business is going through transformation, and if you don't innovate across all of that, it's not going to work in your favor. So the reason people are blocked by innovation is because when we talk about innovation, the first thing that comes to your mind is a light bulb, electricity. These revolutionary innovations, they do not happen every day. But 99% of innovation is evolutionary innovation, which is just stretching the limit of state of the art to the next level and is still producing something useful, and that is innovation. That innovation you and I need to invest in and establish in our companies every day. There are certain practices you can follow, and it's really top-down from creating the culture of innovation. Innovation can happen bottoms up, but innovation culture has to be created top-down. Only then innovation happens in your company. So for example, in Harvard Business Review, they interviewed many, many CEOs and asked them, what is the single most important thing a manager of an organization has to do to encourage innovation? And guess the answer, creating a culture of innovation in your companies. I have done that successfully in India, in Bangalore, in Dell and Cisco in my previous engagements. And the innovation has gone up 10 to 20x times by creating the culture of innovation by doing various things. So in close, what I want to tell you is that large amount of innovation still takes place in large organizations. Each one of us in any role have to make sure we are focused on innovation. And you, as the top leadership of a company, has to create the culture of innovation, which your junior people and young engineers and young entrepreneurs within your company can really enjoy in that culture and create lots and lots of innovation, which is critical for success of your company. Thank you very much.
Oh, wonderful, I think. So I think all of us have to take some steps to, do something about
That's right.
innovation, because innovation is going to be the key to survival as well. And just to, of course, brief you on our firm, we are now setting up a 4-acre campus in Mumbai just for blue sky thinking. Just nothing only for law or tax. If some of us sit together for 1 or 2 days, third day we'll come up with some innovative idea, maybe stupid as well. But, so next year it will be ready, it's under construction. But I would love to have many ideas that, how do you put together the whole thing? And because the biggest question is, what kind of issues we are confronting in India, and how can we resolve them as we move forward? That is the theme of today's discussion. Maybe we can have some people share their experiences, in inculcating this culture of innovation. Anybody would like to speak? Philip Van Hilton, he's also a member of our Board of Trusted Advisor, and he is specially flown down from Netherlands. So,
true. I wanted to refer to the period where, from 1975, I've been for 25 years on the executive committee of what I would consider one of the most innovative companies in the world, called IKEA. Not known here in India. And why? In 1976, we developed a small program where we had 4 factors to look at for investing in other countries. The first one, Shekhar mentioned already, the fear factor. How is the fear factor affecting a culture? Second, protectionism. Now, why is IKEA? I have been working for 14 years getting us into India. Have not succeeded. Why? Protectionism. There is no other word for it. Protectionism kills any innovative system. Third one, important, freedom. You have to have the freedom of mind, of movement, and money. Because if you say, fine that you do something, but it all stays here, you will not succeed in attracting talent. And the last one, most importantly, Ingvar Kamprad, who created something which was totally revolutionary. I don't think anyone can claim that someone changed the furniture world the way he has. It is completely different as a result of his thinking. He had not much education. He's a bloody good carpenter. He's a bloody good out-of-the-box thinker. He stimulates, from the word go, anyone within the company and outside to come up with new ideas. If you look at the catalog, digital catalog of IKEA, currently going out in 800 million copies per year, per season, if you look at that, it changes constantly, and it brings constant new ideas because it is stimulated from the top and it's sucked in from the bottom. Anyone who brings a new product is recognized immediately throughout the company and rewarded for it. And so I think that it's not just technology, but what we learned was fear factor, protectionism, too many rules to keep you in position. And that is what you have to deal with if you want to get true innovation.
Thank you so much, Philip, for sharing your IKEA experience. I think IKEA is a very interesting company. And just to make one little comment on innovation and the protectionism, I think the worst thing in the world for intellectuals or people, human beings, and the worst form of protectionism, and which is against human rights, is immigration laws. I think together that is what we really need to fight for. People should be able to move anywhere, and this is recognized even at the United Nations, that it is not just right to exist, but it is right to prosper. It is also a part of human rights. So I think for India, if one thing I have to trade for anything, I would really fight immigration. Every developed country says, oh, we don't believe in protectionism. When it comes to services, immediately, no. I think that is what I think as an industry and otherwise we should be doing. Can you just please tell your name and, you know.
Thank you. This is Masayoshi Tamura, working for Hitachi India. And I was born in Tokyo, and I have been living in Bangalore for 3 years. And let me share some perspective. I love India. Actually, I love Bangalore also. Namaskara Chanagirira. Uta Aita Agira. Yeah, and one easy technique for innovation I have learned is like combining different kind of things. And as a Japanese, I'm learning about India, and I have found several different things, good and bad. And thank you for some of complimentary kind of comment about Japanese culture of just in time. And yeah, I have learned it, and I'm proud of that. And on the other hand, I'm seeing some different kind of culture by saying 2 minutes here. And yeah, but yeah, I'm not complaining, or I'm not criticizing, but some different kind of things are here. I mean, young passion, energy is here in India, so I'm trying to combine it. And innovation, you have the god of Shiva. To me, Shiva is a god of innovation. Fearless, you see, no common sense from the past. You can break the rules. So you have a very good culture of innovation in your deep inside of your heart. So I'm trying to combine Japan and India, different set of strengths. And even before the meeting of Prime Minister of Modi-san and Abe-san, you know, a lot of Japanese are coming, but not yet many Japanese have learned about good things about India. So please educate Japanese about your strengths. You have a lot of that, and let's combine it to come up with something better for the world. And yeah, let's work on that. That's my perspective.
Oh, thank you so much. I think interesting point that comes out of this is just not about product innovation, but also process. So you can look at each of the touch points in your business and see where you can improve. It's not just about new product or otherwise, but if you can even improve your processes, that lots of innovations are then just in time is possibly one of the things. And I'm sure Shekhar has something.
Yeah, no, oh, thanks. You
no, I'm glad you said.
I was just going to take about that point of Shiva, but yeah, India is fundamentally any culture that embraces the ideas of, that is comfortable with chaos, is essentially an innovative culture. Because any culture that is taught completely because that's what's creative. That's why IKEA, because the head of IKEA actually gets very chaotic, because how can he come up with so many designs? So he goes into an area of chaos. So yeah, that is very, very, very essential. But one question about, there's a difference between the act of creativity, the act of innovation, and the organization. What you were talking about was the organization. So even, let's say, a classical musician, right, will spend his life doing riyaz, and that's his discipline, that's his organization. And that for that one moment, when he gets that creative idea, so he can organize it into his discipline. The moment of creativity, everybody accesses the same. The musician takes it, Mozart will create the Requiem, somebody will create something else, Einstein will create his relativity theory. So it's the organization is there, but that's not necessarily the way to encourage, it's the way to hold it, to nurture it. So there's a slight difference in there on that. But Shiva, absolutely. The land of chaos. Yeah.
I was going to, something you said was interesting. Let me just recount to you, I'm a chip designer by training. You know, I was at Sun Microsystems on the Spark chips, and then at Intel and so on the Pentium chips. And the interesting thing is, when I look back, the people who were designing were from China, from India, from Israel, a lot of them Americans, you know, born there. And we all had a different perspective. we had come from completely different backgrounds. Oftentimes, many of them could not, even speak English, so the whiteboard is where we drew things, right? But we came up with amazing things in California, right? Silicon Valley, sort of hotbed of innovation. And one of the things that always struck me was that melting pot, that diversity, because we're all looking at different perspectives. We have a different perspective of the same thing we're looking at, and then we together create amazing things. So when I look back here at our own companies that we do out here, the first question I ask is, how can we get diversity? Of course, we get people from all over India, which is great, but can we get people from abroad, from different cultures, which look at the same problem differently, is something that's really, really important. And if we can do more of that, I think it'll help innovation.
Yeah, thank you. So let's go on, and Vaibhav, can I also ask you a little bit, how does law affect innovation in any way?
Okay. You're talking about chaos, and there's no more chaotic than law, in my view. And we are seeing the result, right? I think everybody would have read about Uber, Amazon, how the innovative business models have got kind of caught up in law. And this is what happens, because when lawmaker makes law, they make law based on problems they see. Based on what they see is definitely not what they see will be the result of innovation. But the innovation by definition is something which did not exist, and if it did not exist, lawmakers would not have made law for it. So we have to bridge the gap between law and innovation, right? Take, for example, IoT, Internet of Things, which is a new, next big thing, new buzzword. Arvind is sitting there, he's championing it. He knows how much he has to go through on IoT. And, do we realize what IoT is? Just everybody knows about it, so I'll just spend a minute there. Basically, every machine, every equipment, will be computerized, will talk to each other. So your doors will talk to your fridge will talk to your TV will talk to your car, coffee maker, everything will be interconnected. And when it becomes interconnected, every time someone opens a door, someone will know that you have entered or you left. When you open your fridge, someone knows you are hungry. When you watch television or when you open on your car and travel, someone will know you are traveling. The question is, who owns the data? Right? You own the data, or each individual company which gives you that machine owns the data. And what happens with the privacy, right? How they can share the data, because that data, when you meet with the wearable devices, which everybody is wearing, including me, on medical devices, you really have someone's life on it. That can be misused, right? There's the biggest issue of security, which is coming up. Somebody can hack and control your car. That's very scary, right? The question is, if something malfunctions, who is liable, right? If somebody has given a signal to a fridge, or fridge has given a signal to a car, is the fridge maker liable, or is the car liable? What exactly has happened? Government is thinking of making rules on machine to machine. What are the rules going to be? How they are going to talk to each other? There are a lot of questions which come, which law does not have a solution. Today we are actually launching this book on Internet of Things. We've identified all these issues and put on some of those issues we have tried to identify. Same way, e-commerce. Bigger issues come. E-commerce taxation became so big that we had $400 million litigation in India on e-commerce taxation, right? Gaming. My colleague, partner Gauri here is sitting. She's doing a lot of work on online gaming because the gaming laws are completely territorial.
No. Because she gets to go to Nevada and Macau and all the exotic places in the world. That's why. Anyway, sorry for divulging.
I will say that even tax lawyers end up going to all great places like Cayman Island, Bermuda, Mauritius. But anyway, I think the point what I was trying to say that each one of these new things are really issues which you need to bridge the gap. I think in short, we will have to innovate to get innovation in practice. I think that is the bottom line I want to live with. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Shekhar? That's why it's unconference also I learned from you.
What he just said is that if you murder somebody, the gun manufacturer is liable. Because it's like, right? It's an interesting thing because with IKEA, you talked about protectionism. Now we've got to have 3D printers. All I need to do is download a software somewhere that might be pirated from IKEA and print an IKEA furniture in my home. And now how are you going to handle that? Because it doesn't go through any protectionism. It's lying in my house. So there's a whole new world, and that's what's wonderful about technology, is each technology changes IKEA. It'll have to change IKEA, it'll have to change laws. That's exactly what I mean, that the ground is shifting from under our feet. So soon, we will be, all our products will not be put together with different machine parts. They will be built, and then we will have to get used to products that actually can be built, and manufacture will go that way. So there's a huge change coming with technology. Everywhere you go, it's just, it'll go to disrupt, and it's great, because trade is all about how soon can you get your product to somebody else. And if I can just download something, I don't have to wait for a shipment from IKEA. It comes to me in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or however long it takes to make the product. And then the trade goes up. So technology creates change and challenges for all of us, and all the corporations will suddenly start shaking. And it's
in
wonderful.
fact, Shekhar, you use word house, you use word home, and I recall how innovation can happen at home also. You see, this whole idea of blue sky thinking center, what happened, my wife likes to spend, okay? I work for her. And suddenly she bought this big piece of land in Alibag, and I was really shocked. And we had little skirmish also at home. But then next thing, I think I have to be innovative, because you can never argue, and you surrender at certain places. And I thought, what can I do? I said, at least I can do blue sky thinking there. But when I thought more, it became more realistic. And thanks to her, that she, I was incentivized to do something. I didn't know anything else. And I thought, at least I can go and sleep and look at blue sky and create a lot of ideas. And hopefully one of those will succeed. And I can invite friends like you. And that's why this whole idea of the blue sky thinking came up. And I thought, am I doing for money? I said, no, for excitement and for happiness. So I said, what model should we follow? Okay. So I saw a lot of models in the world, what you call public sector, private sector, public-private sector, philanthropy, charitable, and I thought, okay, it's a private property for public good. So we'll create a blue sky thinking center, and we'll allow anyone to use free of cost, no problem, because I don't want to put ROI. What is important to me is ROE, what you call excitement quotient, right? And if we can, ultimately, purpose of all that we are doing is to be happy. So I think we have to be very creative. So even within the house, you can start. You can make your wife or spouse happy all the time if you are innovative, because that culture you start, you'll automatically imbibe in your corporation as well. But anyway, on that note, anybody else would like to share some experience? Here, you tell your name, just a microphone. We'll get everyone an opportunity, because I think we have enough time now, with the consent of everyone. Like Scotland, it's not split vote.
My name is Vinod Malhotra from MISIS. I have a question on the last comment about legal aspects and innovation. How important is IP protection to encourage the culture of innovation?
Yes, correct, right. Yes.
Okay. First, let others speak. Then I would also comment, because I don't want to influence anybody's thinking.
To the question of IP protection, I think what you're trying to get at through protection is really to ensure that the person who invents is commensurately rewarded, right? Now, I think what we're going to see probably is less duration of patent time. It's like 17 years or whatever in the case of patent protection. But the world is flatter than it's ever been before, okay? Which means what Shekhar suggested, which is a design will move from IKEA's maybe showcase in New York, and it'll end up on a sofa in Bangalore somewhere, and people will 3D print, and it may not even have to be actually a rip-off. It may be crowdsourced. There may be open source designs that are available that are just as good. You can discover things, you can curate things, you can go there and self-serve like you could never do even 3 years ago. So that means people who are creative somewhere in some corner of the world, I can go discover them. And I could not do that 5 years ago. You know, there are whole portals there in all vertical areas. If it's music, if it's, you know, photography, if it's in, you know, even industrial design, where you'll be able to go see curated catalogs, you'll be able to reach out to designers and to creative people across the world and be able to, you know, license their product at very low cost, because they'll be able to give it to you at low cost because they have huge distribution, they have huge reach. And so they can monetize in a way that they were not able to do 5 years ago. So discovery, distribution, and monetization, that's, you know, huge. The whole reason patents were put in place and IP was created because it was hard to monetize and you had a free rider problem. Oh, where would the incentive be to innovate? If everybody could copy you within a day of you innovating. And if you actually can monetize and add to that the community's trust factor, which is the community is going to give you a crowdsourced verdict on what it is that's best. And in fact, I think downstream, the community is actually going to protect the IP by voting the person who innovates up the chain. And you may not even need the archaic laws we have today, because you'll just go to the eBay of ideas, and the best innovators will be on top, and you'll see their portfolio of ideas, and you'll download, you know, and you'll go and, you know, build 3D print it or use it or consume it, especially in digital assets, right? And that's I think, the new economy. And, you know, maybe we need, you know, it'll take us 25 years to get there, but we're just, you know, 25 years in the scheme of things is not that much.
Vivek, let me...
I'm going to completely disrupt him. Is that okay? I think we're already there. I think that if I was in my business, certainly, I'll be going to Nishith, not very far from here. I said, Nishith, can you IP protect me for 1 day? Not 75 years, because the product, if it needs 75 years of shelf life, it's not a product anymore. It doesn't exist. What exists in the way that the world is moving, the dissemination of information, the dissemination of IP, and the dissemination of ideas and product is so fast, so we've got to get used to the fact that we are lazy people. We've lived in a lazy world. We've lived in a world full of inertia. And every time we talk about IP, we're trying to protect that. Every time. Certainly in my business, IP will be laid off, and it'll all be about brand. You trade IP for brand. You give away IP, you create brand, and you create more IP. That increases your brand, and your value lies in your brand and not necessarily in your IP, because IP has little shelf life. It will have little. There's no way. The pirates of everything are technologically ahead of you. They always were, and they always will be. So you've got to think about that.
Vivek, you have...
Yes,
add one more
thing I just wanted to add
We'll go once again. No
I
problem.
am beneficiary of this. After my PhD, I invented an instrument, patented it, and earned royalty on it for 17 years. Now, why should I not earn the royalty on this for 17 years? Everyone before me could have invented it as well. So if I have worked my tails off to invent something, I do believe there is some protection that has to be there for me or for the company to take advantage of that.
Yeah, just to reiterate, my question was more at a macro level. Do you see a relationship between,
we'll come to that.
the innovation in US?
I'll tell you how important it is. It's certainly important for lawyers. Okay. So you have to understand that part, but I'll also have a different perspective after I have, you know,
So
Ravi.
I think
we have some comment to make.
No, so what I was going to say is, you know, in addition to the latency or the shelf life of innovation being very small in terms of being able to protect it, I also think you're going to have to see in these platforms a lot of collaboration. It's co-invention, co-creation, right? And that's something that we could not enable before easily. And so you're going to start to see experiences, really, not even products, not even services, not even actual things, experiences, be a mashup of contributions from different areas, right?
Thank you.
It's going to be, and you know, this is what most of the companies today are trying to figure out, is it can't be all built in-house. It has to be through an ecosystem of partners. It has to be through outreach to the innovative, maybe startup community in some instances, maybe to other companies. And, you know, that's how you're going to deliver really, truly valuable experiences, right?
Right.
I disagree with one point constantly. The assumption that people will stop innovating if they don't have no IP protection is completely wrong. People innovate because they love to innovate. People write music because they love to write music. People create new products because they love to create new products. Is it really expensive to create new drugs? Of course it is. Why is it cheaper to create new drugs in India and more expensive? It's about the amount of money you pay to people. That's all. You know, I think that people will innovate, and I don't buy this idea at all that, oh, all innovation and all if there's no IP protection. I think we'll find ways. There will be IP protection, but you won't be able to sit in your IP for very long. And so you'll have to get used to the fact that there's somebody sitting right there boiling under you. So you'll have to find ways of constantly innovating your innovation again and again and again. You'll do that all the time.
Absolutely. Vaibhav, you have some point.
Yeah, I think this is a very important question. If you really look at it, the IP protection, and I was saying in my earlier discussion, was based on old business, right? When you took a drug, it took so many years to get it to a market. And when it took so many years to get into market, then they say, you know, I spent so much time, can I at least recover money and make some profit out of it, right? That was the whole concept. The business now has completely changed, right? As Shekhar said, one day may be good enough. Next day, this whatever IP may not be relevant. Yes, some of the business model on drug may still continue. Not necessarily it has to continue. There is a lot of innovation there too. So I think, in my view, the way world is going, even IP laws have to innovate. Today, there is already a concept which we are working on with Sam Pitroda, who everybody knows is a great innovator himself, is on world patent. Today, there is no concept of world patent. And if you see, a lot of patent trolls are taking over patents and really becoming hindrance to innovation rather than helping the innovation. So innovating on IP laws is very, very crucial, and I think time is now. That's, I think, what I would want to say.
Also, the Mahabharata didn't have a publisher.
We produce huge amount of content, and we are now known as, I went to Jaipur with you on a conference. Several people came forward and told me you are an open source law firm. The amount of research we do, number of consulates and other come and tell us we'll pay you 10,000. Small books like this, because it takes huge amount of time to understand the space and develop a depth in the whole thing. $10,000, $15,000 they are willing to pay for certain reports. We just give out free to the whole world, including to our competitors. But what it does, it creates a different business model. So IP, yes, it is important, but it is not around obtaining licenses or license fees. But IP will be a great leverage to develop your brand and to develop your new business models. Right? So that is what is, so how do you create new business models around IP? That is what is going to survive. Like film industry at one point of time, everything was pirated freely with videos and all this kind of stuff. Somebody came up with the idea, okay, we'll put small advertising strip. It is whatever little revenue you could get, because more people pirate, more people see the ad. So there are different business models. I think the art is going to be in developing new ideas around that, because the fact is that it's going to be very difficult to protect IP. And of course, lawyers will be beneficiaries. And
there is
in
one
the
question in the
films.
back.
Sorry for that.
Question at the back.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. The gentleman there and lady, of course, will get opportunity. No problem.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Christian Daran. I was born in a small island called Martinique, nearby America. I live in France. Talking about innovation, I want to talk about something important we did, me and my elder brother, back in Africa in 2008. In 2008, in Ivory Coast, there was not a good GPS, you know. Talking about global positioning system, there was not a GPS. And if you want to go somewhere, you need to ask somebody on the street, like, you are looking for a direction. And I was speaking to my elder brother, like, what can we do about innovation? In 2008, we started a company, a GPS company that's called O1. You guys can find it on Google, O1. It's a GPS company. And we won a prize in 2009 for the best young company in Africa, the best innovation in GPS. In the beginning, only 25% was using the GPS because they say it was too costly for them. And now we have, if I'm telling the truth, it's more than 3,500 people in Ivory Coast now in Abidjan who has a GPS. I know that is not a big amount of people, but I want to also talk about the consequences of innovation. Talking about IT, in 2014 we are. Back in 2001, if someone has a little request to ask to his dad, for example, a young guy was looking for a meaning of a word, and he came to his dad and said, "What's the meaning of innovation?" Is dad gonna take something like a dictionary to explain him? But nowadays, if you ask a question to your dad, for example, what's the meaning of innovation? He will tell you, go to the internet. Right? This is the consequences of innovation.
Appreciate it.
I will finish soon. So I'm very glad to be among you guys tonight. And I'm learning a lot in India culture because I'm here for social work. I know at this point it's not for social action. But I have a question. What's going to be the consequences on people in India?
So your question in short is that, is this incremental innovation is really an innovation? Am I right?
No, not that.
What?
My question going to be, what's going to be the consequences on the people in India? Because if you talk about IT and all those social medias, it's creating a selfish population. If I can explain my point.
If you can be a little
So I
quick,
think the question, what I understand is what is the consequence of innovation on people of India?
Because now, if you talk about social media like Facebook, people are spending more time on Facebook than speaking to others. People are becoming more selfish. It's very useful, but after 5 years...
sociological impact, I think.
After 5 years for you, what's going to be an impact of innovation in India?
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I think if there are any reactions to what kind of changes that will bring about, in the society, in your behavioral pattern and stuff like that, I would like to have some comments from this side, and then maybe we can take one or two. But if you can just give little glimpse as to what kind of world we are going to see.
So, I can take a crack at that. I think, the question is very broad, but, I'm not going to address the social media impact. I think, we go through waves of certain things becoming obsessive, and then, you'll get new things that replace that. But, India is full of divides of various kinds, okay? And India is an opportunity-rich environment for innovative application of especially technology, right? So I think there's huge opportunity, across especially fundamental things like education, health, to bridge those divides using technology. I think, you don't have to be hugely innovative to figure out how to apply some of this technology in a meaningful way in India. Honestly, there's, we don't actually have to go build an innovation lab to figure out how some of the existing technology we have can benefit people, right?
Yeah,
I think there's just huge opportunity across
absolutely.
the board.
I think people are going to stay connected with each other, but in a different form, The traditional way in which you connected with each other and the way in which we'll connect with each other is going to change. It's going to get what in India we call Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That means whole world is one family, and you'll be connecting with each other in different forms. So behavioral pattern and the things will change. There is some question from, and Weber, I would also want to, this thing. Bina, you had any question at time? Oh, okay, fine. Okay, please, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Anshulika. I run this startup called Wishberry.in. It's an online crowdfunding platform, something that was a stupid idea back in 2012 when we started, because everybody said Indians don't give. So it's not going to come across as a Kickstarter. You guys are not going to be able to take money out of anybody's top pockets for creative stuff. But obviously, in the last 2 years, we proved ourselves wrong also. We raised $500,000 for 600 projects from 8,500 people across the world. But I have a very different question. That was just my introduction. Competition, I think, is very important for innovation. And
what's that? Say that again.
Competition.
Okay.
Sorry. Is very important for innovation, and I have an example to share there. When we have a lot of telcos, right? they had SMSs and SMS packages to kind of woo customers. So somebody went down to, you just pay 50 paisa now, or, you get packages for free SMS. And then after some 5, 6, 10 years, WhatsApp just killed SMS, right? Do you think that there is less competition among companies, whatever companies, not just telcos, that is making us lazy to even think the next level of, just communication or any other thing? They couldn't think about SMS. And in fact, I was reading in one of the papers last week that some telcos are suing WhatsApp, because they're like that, you've taken away SMS revenue, and obviously this was a ridiculous ask. And people were saying, did the landline companies sue you when you took out mobiles? So what do you think about competition? And do you think in India specifically, because in abroad we have, some tremendous awesome cases, do you think there is less competition in India among companies?
1 cent value here.
I think by next year somebody will be suing WhatsApp, or WhatsApp will be suing somebody. Technology today is changing so fast, and adoption to new technology, you have no idea. By the time I got used to SMS, my daughter was saying, "Dad, don't SMS me, WhatsApp me," and I had to go discover. Then there was Viber, there was everything else. And by the time she gets used to WhatsApp, there'll be another technology, and each technology will make it. There was Snapchat, now they're all on Snapchat. So is WhatsApp going to sue Snapchat? And Snapchat will be. So I think there's enough technological innovation going on in this world right now to create so much conflict that you can't sleep well at night, right? If you develop something.
Yeah. Well, I just had a interesting story. I was looking for a carpenter, and there's this carpenter from Mysore came up, and I wanted something carved. And he said, "Oh, I've done all these amazing carvings." And I said, "Do you have pictures?" Sometimes they have this little catalog kind of thing to show what they've done in the past. He said, "No, I don't have pictures, but I have digital pictures that I've taken of what I've done." I said, "Wonderful. Can you send me by email, perhaps?" He said, "Sir, I don't know email and all that stuff." But he turned around and asked me, "Do you have WhatsApp?" I was like, whoa. How did this guy know WhatsApp? So what I realized was that WhatsApp had come from the mobile, and we have come from the PCs. And we know email. They don't care about email because they've got a better medium using a friendlier device, and it's gone viral. So this, about your question, WhatsApp did what it did because it innovated, right? So I think it's not so much do we have enough competition, it's do we do enough innovation. I don't think we do. Okay, the point that many of us have been making. So I think we need to innovate more. It's not like WhatsApp could not have come from India, right? I mean, it's not that great technology from a technology perspective, but the idea was brilliant, right?
And even the mobile is not safe. We just think we all are developing things in the mobile, thinking, oh, in 10 years we'll still have that.
It'll be a watch.
Right. It'll be a watch. It'll be nothing. It'll be ether. By the time you get there, you get everything down from the ether, and you'll say, those poor, like my daughter, I tell you, when I told her about my days of the phone, 8 years waiting for a telephone, waiting all of that, and she looked at me with great, great sympathy and empathy and said, "Daddy, were you born in ancient times?" Like, if you didn't have a computer, you were in the Stone Age. And that's what they'll be saying about us. These guys used to carry this stupid thing around that they were constantly losing and they had to pay for it. That's what we're doing. So nothing is safe. And that's the exciting part of technological innovation now.
That's right. I'll just add one small comment, and we'll take a vote after this if you are really interested in that. Because I only want to do it with your consent. If you're really enjoying and you don't want to have dinner, you can continue. One comment on the competition. You really have to understand what competition means to you and to the industry as a whole. We have to move and start thinking at the next level, what is called competition. You can also compete and cooperate and do a lot of things that you otherwise may not be able to do. Competition is the biggest stress creator in almost all organizations today, because what has happened, particularly from the West, what we have got at Wild West, like US, what we learn, competition, you must have killing instinct, okay, rather than winning instinct. And in the process, the stress created is very high Because in a killing instinct, what happens, you want to kill a competition, okay, and stuff like that. In the process, it starts from the CEO or the chairman or the board or whatever it is. It brings so much pressure on the people that at any cost, we have to win. Then means do not really matter. And you have seen a number of examples. Great companies have fallen down because they want to win competition at any cost. So we have to change mindset from what you call from killing instinct to winning instinct. It is a tremendous psychological impact simply because if you have a winning instinct, even if you lose sometime, it's a sport rather than a war. That's what, you have to think. So you have to train your people that, yeah, competition is there. You have to have some reasonable stress, but excessive stress is going to create more problems because, it does not give you happiness. When you kill somebody, you see blood at the end of the day. But in a sport, when you lose, for a moment you feel dejected, but you try to win again, and then you still open bottle of champagne together. So if you create that culture of winning instinct rather than killing instinct, what will happen? People will be happier. If they are happier, they'll be more creative and you can create more value. So it has a whole value chain attached to the whole thing. And we are moving towards the new thinking, what is called competition. You cooperate, you compete, I think, and that kind of things we really need to now imbibe. You had some comment or...
a question that I have
Your
for
name?
the panel, Raji Nagarkar.
I know you
and
long time.
I had legal for LinkedIn. Yes, I've known Nishith for a long time. A question I had for the panel was, as innovators and entrepreneurs, I wanted to hear your perspective on IP protection, going back to the question. How often have you found IP protection to kind of be a hindrance to innovation, or so kind of in your companies in the past? How often have you felt excluded because somebody else owns a patent in that area? I'm sure it's fairly often, but I kind of wanted to hear your perspective.
Well, I'll answer as an engineer. We were told never to do searches, right? Because, in an engineering team, you don't want to actually discover prior art, you don't want to expose yourself. So you leave that to the lawyers. You go ahead and you innovate, and you don't willfully violate anybody's innovation, patents or anything. You try to record what you're doing. It's a huge problem in open source because there are many variants of open source, and oftentimes companies don't realize what they're doing. There's an MIT version, there's a GPL version, there's a left GPL version. When you start to look at that in intricacies, when my last company was acquired, we started to do what was a black duck, which is, you go through, you give all your source, they run it through the system, they pattern match against every piece of software known to man, and then they come back with a report and say, your developer at this time in GitHub copied this from that site. Can you prove that you had the right license, right? And so you need to go back. So, we realized then we had to actually spend a couple of months redacting certain pieces of code because they were just questionable whether we could get the license and things like that. So education's not given here sometimes. People ignore it. It doesn't impact till you actually have a transaction where this comes up, right, oftentimes. But I think it's, there's so much open source available now that you can leverage. There's so much available at lower cost that it hasn't really had a stacking effect, right, which is I need XYZ dependencies, at least in software. Now, it's probably different in other areas, okay? So I'm sure if you're trying to put together a jet engine, it's going to be very hard to do it from scratch.
Right.
Yeah. Very, very hard. But to the same point, take a look at what Tesla did, right? So they can redefine, maybe, you need to really think. It forces you to think out of the box and redefine what an automotive car is, right? And do it completely from scratch. And, you're actually then building a series of your own protections. And then what they did was actually now license their technologies in an open source way, right? So that they can have people adopt the platform rather than use it as a means of protection. They want it to be an attraction mechanism, not a protection mechanism. And so the really true innovators are willing to give away, right? They want you to be in a symbiotic relationship to form. And that's key, I think, going forward.
Shrikant, you have and
what I was going to say, Raju, was, I used to work in large companies, Sun and Intel and Silicon Graphics and so on. And IP was a big deal when we worked in those companies. Did you sign an NDA, that person sitting here, and why, did you talk to that, who's that and what organization? And there was always a lawyer, in many of the teams, watching over what was happening, and have we patented that new idea, so on and so forth. And then I did many startups in California and then here. We never think about IP. I mean, really, okay? Because the space we are in is empty. Much of the innovation is happening in such new universes that all this IP stuff is large companies protecting, oh, I did touch screen and you did this and so on. And the kinds of things most startups do are in completely new areas where maybe they can patent things, often they don't, okay? Maybe they did detrimental lawyers, but so the point I'm trying to make is, I don't know, for whatever reason, I haven't given much thought about IP at all when we've been doing startups, right? And it's not as though startups don't do important new invention and create large companies.
Yep.
I was sitting in Kate Blanchett's house in Hollywood, right, in Los Angeles, and an armored car came in. And she said, Shekhar, you'll have to go or sit in the other room. I said, why? I said, what is this armored car? And she said, it's the script of the new Raiders of the Lost Ark. And so 3 assistant directors, somebody armed, came in, and she read the script in front of them and gave it back. And she said, it's really secret, you know, they've got these ideas, they don't want anybody to have those ideas. And then when the film came out, I went to see the film, there was not a single new idea in it. So there is, you know, there's a lesson to learn from that.
We can vote and everybody can
contribute.
Quickly.
Just one quick comment to make to Raj's point. I think done a lot of work on, when you do a lot of work on IP, you realize that there is nothing which is a hurdle, or everything is a hurdle, and there's nothing which is a hurdle. You find a hurdle in terms of patent, you find ways to overcome it. And by doing it, you innovate more. And I have I think, couple of clients and friends here. 10 years ago, we helped Guru and Sudarshan from Vakya. They're sitting here, both places. And they were doing a very interesting thing, and they found that, look, we can't do this. So they, while looking at it, they innovated constantly and came with a better product when they filed the patent.
Excellent.
So I think that's the way I look at IP.
We'll take 2 or so more questions. 3? Okay, 3. 4, 5.
I have something.
I know.
Here.
Okay. Shekhar, please tell.
I just said this. There's something in India called service, in service of people. I went to see Amma, you know Amma, the hugging saint, and I sat with her, I interviewed her. She has 400 schools. She has 5 universities. She has institutes of high technology. Nobel Prize winners work there. They all do it free. She's one of the most innovative people I know in terms of how does a woman who hugs people for 10 hours a day, sings to them for 2 hours a day, meditates with them for 2 hours a day, run this organization that goes all over the world. And I asked her, I said, what is it? And she said, it's intuition in service of people. Now, when we are talking about IP and we've talked all of this, the best organizations in the world, the most beautifully run organizations in the world that I've seen, the most wonderful places that you go to, and these, I interviewed some Japanese people that came, a Japanese doctor who came from Paris. He said it's the best pediatric surgery that I've ever done is in a hospital. How? So what we keep talking about, if you don't protect, there's no innovation, there's nothing. Yet, the best run are run in the service of the people.
Yep.
We've got to think about that.
In fact, I can take on to that point a little. Indian economy today is about 66% service economy. 56% normal services, 10-12% construction if you include. There is so much opportunity in service sector. Within the service sector, huge opportunities lay in front of us in social sector. I think because the scalability high, it's a laboratory that you can have. Cost of failure is very low, okay, except in India, people do not respect failures. That's the problem sometimes. But still, it's happening. So in social sector, social business models are going to create very interesting opportunities. And we'll have some program in the month of March. Dr. Mohammed Yunus is my friend. He has agreed to come. So if you're interested in just discussing innovation in social service sector, I think we'll perhaps have another opportunity to make a note of that. So, but I thought that service sector, not only social business, but like shoe polish to anything you take, There are large number of opportunities, but the economy immediately supports that. And of course, manufacturing will happen as it goes on. Yes, can you speak your name, and we'll give opportunity to everybody. At least give 5-7 more minutes, and we'll definitely let you go for dinner.
Yeah, so my name is Nave, and I study in the 9th grade. So my question is, you guys talked about IP protection laws. What do you think is necessary, and what's the significance of innovating in IP protection laws?
Your dad, oh yeah, before that.
We have an innovation already here, and it's looking for people to support it. It's called Bitcoin. Has anybody heard of Bitcoin? Actually, it's going to be answering the question too. In terms of IP, Bitcoin has already developed a product which you can set up your IP straight on the blockchain, and it costs only 50 paise today. And it is instant, it is seamless as how emails are. This blockchain which runs, Bitcoin runs as blockchain. Blockchain is nothing but like internet for Bitcoin. So this Bitcoin, which is a currency of internet, runs on this blockchain, and the blockchain actually can do a lot more than just move the money around, the value around. And it moves the value around globally, seamlessly and instantly. And similarly, you can even set up your IP. You have a product, you have an innovation, you have a small idea, you can set it up on the blockchain, and it records to you instantly and low cost. It's like as low as 50 paise, that is never thought of. These are the innovations that's already there, and some of these needs a support. It needs community, it needs understanding, it needs people to actually look into it and see how much more it can change. The IP is just one part of it. It is going to eliminate a lot of third-party services, right? So you go to sit in the US and you want to buy a product or a property in India, you need to go through a lot of paperwork to check the paperwork of the property and its history. All this history is going to go on the blockchain, like how we have websites on the internet. This is going to go on the blockchain, and blockchain is going to help and innovate even for IP and all of those innovations that's coming up.
Absolutely. In fact, it's been a pleasure working with him, and we specialized Bitcoin about 3 years ago. Never knew that things will move so fast. It has been moving so fast, and now we have done a lot of comparative studies, including whether it is a commodity or is it a money, what are the IP issues, what are the tax issues, all those kind of things we did 3 years, and we thought it will take 5-10 years by the time Bitcoin will begin to happen. But suddenly we find in less than 2 or 3 years it came up. So world is moving faster than what you think. And it's very important. So we have to do a lot of legal innovations in your space, and tax, of course. Next question. Yes,
maybe Shrikant can talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah, of course. Shrikant, Khosla Labs, I think. It's not a trade secret. If it is, it's all
nothing's a trade secret in what we do.
Would there be any trade secret in the future? Okay, I won't ask you that question.
Well, I was going to say, if you ask yourself the question, when you send money to somebody, payments through the bank, through the credit card, you pay through credit card and so on, it's always, there is some 2% charge, or I'll charge you based on how much you send, or how far you send, or do you convert into dollars, and so on and so forth, right? Do you, when you send email, worry about what is the size of your email? I've actually written 100 lines as opposed to only 2 lines. I've actually added this extra, zip file, so it's $30, so maybe I shouldn't send the zip file. You don't, right? And in fact, both of them use the same underlying protocol. The electrons moving from one place to the other. So in one place, we have no problem. We send whatever we want. We're happy. In the other place, we look and say, oh, this is expensive. I don't know how much Visa will charge, and this guy will charge, or what my bank will charge, and so on and so forth. They're doing nothing different. It's exactly the same thing, right? So this idea of cryptocurrencies came up because it's democratizing the financial network. Today, there are big 27-floor buildings where banks run, which are centralized their servers and say, hey, you're going to charge 2% to send money from place to place. So this guy, Satoshi, whoever he is, anonymous, comes up with this amazing protocol that says, well, let's not have that 27-floor building which has computers. Let's use everybody's computers on the internet, and that's good enough because I'll run the general ledger of everybody's transactions on everybody's computers. So it's completely transparent to everybody, and we'll move money around, and it'll be secure because we're using the crypto methods, right? He's using the math to encrypt these transactions and so on, keep it secure. So it's secure, it's free because it's like internet, like sending emails and so on. So as long as you have a pipe connecting to the internet, like, you know, whatever your telecom provider gives you, you're suddenly out there. So that's an amazing innovation. And I think that democratizes banking, that makes the fiat currencies and central banks in some sense redundant, at least in the future. And that also hopefully makes us impervious to, you know, stupid decisions by large central banks, which might affect our lives and we have no control over, right? So I think it's an amazing innovation. And whether Bitcoin as a currency itself will survive or not, you know, the governor of our central bank has said that because it's fluctuating a lot, it's not acting as a good stable currency, which might be true at this point in time. But the underlying network through which we can send money at almost no cost. Can you send 10 rupees using 10 paise today? You can't. Can you pay your auto rickshaw driver through all these methods? You can't, because there's some fixed fee above which all this makes sense. Whereas through a Bitcoin blockchain, as he explained, you can do that. So that's another amazing innovation that's going to, I think, transform the financial as well as other
So what is money and what is not money is becoming important. When we did research and did comparative studies of all the laws and taxation in different parts of the world, and including in India, we came to a conclusion that Bitcoins is not money as defined under the Reserve Bank of India. So they don't have an ability under Constitution to regulate that in many ways, of course, if they change something or otherwise. But it is a commodity. US, Singapore, most countries have said it is a commodity. If it is a commodity, so you're buying something, so-called, it's a barter. If it is barter, then sales tax cannot apply because it is not a sale in the sense of cash, right? It's a barter. So there are many interesting situations that came out, and we are surprised that, you know, Bitcoin India is becoming one of the fastest adopters of Bitcoins in some sense. You know. So I think these are very interesting futuristic things coming up. Other things that we have been working on, privatization of space, because space colonies and stuff like that would happen. So many legal issues. When men landed on moon, first question was, who owns moon? And ultimately, technologists could not find an answer, so they went to lawyers. And lawyers said, it belongs to humanity at large. So there is a treaty on moon. It is called Moon Treaty, by the way. So we do come up with some innovations.
I can pay you your fees in Bitcoins?
Well, I think, yes, they are paying us. Right. Anyway, so, of course, these are exciting things, I think. I know it has gone too long, but can we take one question, two questions, three? I don't know. Let us take then vote. 5 more minutes and be done with that. No further negotiation. Okay, because I'm very charitable at heart, but you know, your stomach will take precedence over my heart. Okay, you had some question, but with 30 seconds, which is too long.
Hi, I'm Satish, and I run a very innovative solution using cooking as a platform for corporates, getting people to come together, cook together, and have a meal together after spending 2 decades in the corporate world. I had an interesting day today because I spent the day in the morning with Marshall Goldsmith, the author of What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So, you know, a lot of what you're talking about is about that. My question is a little more personal to all of you, because in the morning, one of the things that he spoke about was how do you create an employee engagement culture. One of the constituents that we miss out is what are we doing as individuals in that constituency to create that environment. So I want to know from the panelists, when have you been an early adopter of an idea that you thought was completely stupid?
Yeah, I adopted social media before the word social media came in.
I think dinner should be open very soon, so some people, they should not leave without food. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm a constant early adopter, you know. Yeah. I've been to your place, I've used Wishberry, you know, so there's a lot of those things that, you know, I use that go away, right? Right in this room, 2 of the entrepreneurs have used your products, early products, right? So.
Okay. Next one, last one. Just now 20 seconds.
Yeah, so as a follow-up question to this, my name is Raghav. So I was a lawyer till now. I've just started a company where we use quizzing as a means of, learning, development, and engagement. Now, like, I mean, we're working with schools presently, and we're trying to roll out this program. We want to inspire kids to become more curious, innovative, or otherwise. So what are your thoughts on trying to bring about the sense of curiosity and innovation in kids? Like, I mean, just as a follow-up question, Israel is an example of how much GDP. So in college, we had this Consul General of Israel who came to us and said, the reason for that kind of innovation in Israel is because there's an ecosystem upbringing for us that we try to embrace failure very early. And we kind of become more, rustic about, fighting fear of failure very fast. So I think, I mean, that was one of the few philosophical bases on how we are trying to work presently. But we wanted your thoughts on what are the things that we need to, poke holes in our value systems. And like, I mean, Bangalore is not innovative enough. We as Indians are supposed to be chaotic and all that. So just some thoughts from you guys. Yeah.
I think as far as kids are concerned, what we do is we teach them not to be innovative. They're normally innovative, they're playful. See, playfulness and innovation and creativity are the same thing. And the moment you take playfulness away from life or from whatever you do, you're not going to innovate. So a large part of this is go play, go play, go play. It's so hard here. We are taught that. Unfortunately, we have a legacy of an education system that was designed to make us babus. And we need to change that. We need to change that whole education system. It'll take a long time. And that's what's so great about being in the Silicon Valley. Failure is seen as a learning process. So if somebody's done something and tried really hard and they failed, you really welcome them and say, okay, they've learned. They know what not to do. In India, "Arey fail ho gaya yaar, chhod do, isko kya malum," and off they go.
And they've learned that somebody else's money.
Sorry?
No, they have failed and learned that somebody else's money.
Well, that's the nature of private equity, You do that. But that's why you're in the business of private equity. If everybody succeeded, who'd want you? You only climb a mountain because you could fall. Right?
So I think, who?
I think they're...
Okay, go ahead. You need a microphone because...
Okay, I'll make it very quick. So a lot of times when we think of...
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of times when we think of innovation, we think of technology. And technology is very much associated with communication, connectivity. There's both positives and negatives associated with it. How do you believe as innovation becomes ingrained in corporations, governments, schools, if it does, how will that have a long-term impact on human behavior?
Human behavior. Can you specify that? There was a question behind there about human behavior and social media. Is that what you're talking about? No.
In some ways.
Well, I tell you, that's what I worry about that. I concern myself with a lot of social media things. If you look at little boys, they're all wrestling with each other. Now they wrestle on the internet. Are we creating a generation whose relationship with each other is now gone through social media? Now, social media is already causing a lot of psychological problems with kids all over because they judge their self-worth not in an environment of physical and eye-to-eye social activity, which is in schools and playing and game playing, but they are indulging in those on social media. So social media can take your self-worth and ruin it, and that's becoming a huge problem, psychological problem. And so we have to deal with that. And so when these kids grow up, and if all their relationships have been through social media, then how will they handle a real physical relationship? Are they going to be able to sustain real relationships if the only learning process is relationships through social media? So we really have to address these problems, and there will be huge concerns later on as this generation grows up.
Excellent.
But,
let me sort of narrate to you a sort of dilemma that I had when we were designing the Aadhaar system. We're going to collect biometrics of 1 billion people, name, address, gender, and date of birth. And of course, the country debated this quite a bit for 3 to 4 years, and that was a great debate. And I always was, wondering, what is the right answer? Is this going to be Big Brother watching us? Are there going to be negative effects of doing this stuff? Or do the positive benefits of the system actually outweigh these negatives, right? And frankly, when you look at the kind of problems we have and the innovations that exist to solve those problems, those changes will come with some negative effects as well as some risks, right? And finally, at least personally, I felt that the changes that it can bring are so large that while there are things that will certainly go wrong in a system that runs for 1 billion people, we have a democracy that can fix those problems. That is, somebody will defraud the system in spite of this, and then, or somebody will violate somebody's privacy because of the system, and then we'll enact laws to ensure that that gets fixed. So in the, what I'm trying to get at is, we can't stop innovation because there is risk, because there is a possibility of the system being misused. But I think we have to weigh them carefully and let our institutions take care of things that do go wrong in spite of the best design.
Thank you.
And there are fears also, like there's a fear about big data. We talk about big data a lot, and big data is actually looking at you and understanding how you might behave, your tendencies. So that's what's amazing about it. It can look at you and look at tendencies. So how far then do we become from being our own tendency? Because it's a bridge that draws. So if I walk down the street and a cop looks at me and suddenly presses my big data, he might look at me and he has a tendency to crash his car, so don't let him drive. You know? So then what you do is you don't drive. You know? So there are lots of checks and balances that you have to do as this whole thing expands. I have actually a very interesting short story on that, but you can see it on my blog. But
no problem, Shekhar, if it's short story.
No.
Short is understood by everybody.
No.
And
you have to read it. It's about a guy who wants to be...
Because you are a great storyteller.
It's about a guy who tries to order vegetarian food in a restaurant and is constantly being rejected, and his card is rejected, and the waiter rejects it, and ultimately he goes back to Octopi, which is the big data, big person, and it gets through to him and say, no, you don't have a tendency to be vegetarian, you have to order meat. And he says, well, no, I don't want to order meat, I want to try and be vegetarian. You can't be vegetarian, because in this area that you're sitting, there are too many vegetarians already, and it's bad for the meat packing industry. You know, so these are very real potential possibilities, because we are run, often these big data will be run by people with very vested interests.
Ravi, you have...
No, these are almost existential questions, right? In some sense.
They're real.
Yeah, but there's real and present, the danger, the privacy, you know, the lack of intimacy, even the nuclear family will, you know, at some point break down. You know, I've been to so many restaurants where you see all the folks have their smartphones or their tablets out, and they're probably WhatsApping each other, you know, at the table. You know, it's unbelievable. It actually happens, you know. And you know, the lack of community, the loss of community, that's there for sure. I think, and you know, technology is going to push us in many ways. It's not, you can't stop it. Things like, you know, we've been through, you know, the cloning of DNA, you know, bioinformatics is going to have a huge impact. The Internet of Things is going to have a huge impact. You know, you're going to be able to track people down instantaneously. There's going to be a whole bunch of information that's collected about you, the profiles that are created, that will be, you know, I'm sure abused and misused, because, you know, we're going to be in an increasingly boundaryless world where jurisdictions won't apply. The data will flow through where Bitcoin can go, right? In that world, I don't know, you know, I don't think the genie's out of the bottle. I don't think there's going to even be a structure to govern some of this stuff.
Yes, and then I think we'll...
I just think it's an evolution, right? I mean, the whole evolution will take care of all the issues which I worried about. At some point in time, there'll be checks and balances and things will make okay. But I think that this we should...
Manik, just last, that's enough. Introduce yourself too.
Manik Arora, IDG Ventures. You know, the innovation you see in India, often, at least what we end up backing and we've seen market cap created in, is around kind of cheaper, faster, better. Whereas when I used to do VC in the Valley, it was very different. And what distinguished it, at least for me, was the quality of the leader and how he thought. So Nishith, this is a huge compliment to you. You are probably one of the most innovative people I have ever met in general, and especially in an area called law where you don't tend to see it as much.
Boring profession, I know.
You're far from a boring guy, I can tell you that. maybe you can share with us what strategies you've employed to take your DNA or how you've built this organization, recruiting, advisors, R&D. What are things we can do in our own companies to make them more innovative? And if you're too humble, I'll ask Mr. Nimitz, who's watched you at close quarters for many years, to maybe chime in on certain things you may not say about yourself.
No, I think when you start with resource starvation, you begin to become innovative. So something comes with evolution, and when you have difficulties, like in India, it's a great place for innovation because everything is constrained and you can do a lot of things. You have to constantly find ways, but that's part of the environment. When it comes to organization, I studied over 100 organizations around the world 25 years ago, during 1985 to 89, and not only law firms, about 60, 80 law firms, 30, 40 accounting firms, and consulting firms like McKinsey and other ones. I studied them, their histories, the profile and the way in which they were doing things. And then, I did primary study. I went and interviewed about 100 odd managing partners and others. It took about good 4 or 5 years before I set up a law firm. At that point of time, environment in India was, most of the firms were 200 years old, 100 years old and stuff like that. And I'm a new kid on the block. Now, how do I differentiate myself? And I found that they were great firms, nice firms with great history. They could look back with a pride and say, we have got 100-year history, right? Now, I have nothing. I'm a new kid. So I said, oh, what is my strength? Let me look at future 100 years and build a practice on that. So I can be complementary, so-called kind of competition, so complementary to the older firms and add value to the newer things. In the process, also went backward and learned some of the older things. It was a lot of interesting things we forgot. For example, most professional firms today think they are a business firm. Okay? They have forgotten they are professional. So that professional thing was fading. Today, everything is like business run. What is the difference between profession and a business? And some of you must have read Harvard Business Review, I think 2009. Only one question, is MBA a profession? How many of you believe it's a profession? Nitin Nehoria, in that issue, says it's not a profession. Because there is no binding code of conduct. There is no binding code of conduct, so you see all the things. Best of the people get trapped into greed, speed, and scale. These are the three things. They are good, according to some, but Michael Douglas said greed is good, so whole America says greed is good. Okay, you forget about, actually, other thing, speed. Everybody wants to do things fast and fast and fast. But you want to move, like Bill Gates said, move at the speed of rock, doing business at the speed of thought. Everybody wants to do things fast. But to build a rocket, it takes good 20, 30 years, right? People don't want to invest time in building a culture. They want to productize all the services, so they apply mind. So most of the people in service sector began to do that. When I observed some third thing, scale, mindless. In fact, I have one book which just published, and one of my board chair member, Mr. Vijay Raval, he gave me this book. This is a very good book. It says, Fear from Mindless Expansion to Focused Growth. This is a brilliant book. I would recommend a lot of people to look at it. So today we are in the stage where people want to scale up without creating a good foundation. And therefore there is a lot of hollowness. So everybody takes pride in saying we are the biggest, we are the greatest, these, that, etc. But I think we need to be careful. McKinsey, for example, it's now acknowledged that where it began to change its DNA when it expanded too much. I think it's recognized now well, that it went into too much of expansion and they could not retain the DNA. So that has happened with a number of organizations. So right from the beginning, I say that we would expand. My limit to growth is where my happiness ends. Okay? So happiness became a core quotient to attract people and at the same time to differentiate. One was to stay nano, small, but be thought leader and add a lot of value and be professional and do those kind of things. So that was one. Second thing that came up to my mind was, because my background is in research and academics and stuff like that, so it came, and I thought that every new technology, as I said, brings along with a new problem. But what happens when actual thing comes in, then you start searching. E-commerce came and said, oh, what do we do about domain name? We are the first people to, fight domain name case, Similarly, I was at MIT, and I found they're building vertical cars. I asked them that, can you put this car, what is legal and other issues? They said, have you thought of it? So they take 8-10 years to build a new car, and when they want to put it on the road, they start thinking, oh, will it be safe? Then they start thinking of law, and then think of law. So, it delays your market entry by 5-7 years. So we said, why not concurrently start doing legal things? So that is how, slowly it began to happen. But most important thing, what the question you asked, how do you institutionalize creativity? There are two things again. Constantly you have to tell people that creativity and innovation are the key to survival. It is not just a fluffy stuff. It's basic, that mindset. Constantly you have to remind people at the time when people are recruited, right from that until you are doing what you call performance evaluation. That is one thing that you need to inculcate and see that what did you innovate? Whether it's a process, it's not that everybody has to come with breakthrough product, but at least process. So innovation, you can always come up with some improvement. If you're not done anything, then there's a problem. Third thing we say, if you are successful, for example, that's a principle in an organization, suppose you get A grade, like, you do better marketing, you do better other things, etc. I say, if you are successful, you are never successful unless you create two other people, make two other people successful. So even if you have done better job, but you cannot show me who are the two other people who you have helped to come up and inculcate this culture. So I think that is why initial period in any organization is very important. But even in a large organization, you can still build a culture of creativity. And I think all of you do that. I'm not unique to that. But the thing is culture of creativity and remove as many territories as possible. You follow what we call a Google model to some extent. Every lawyer or every professional in the firm, you spend about 70% time on our core competency, 10% something related to core, 20%, and 10% completely different. So you have to show that what did you do outside your vertical? So then they're compelled to spend social sector, you spend some time, maybe you're a great tax lawyer, doesn't matter, but you have to look at the society. I'm just giving an example. Or you do something, if you're a tax lawyer, half the time tax lawyers only look at taxation book. But we say 80% of international tax issues are around what? Intellectual property. Royalties, technical services fees, those are the kind of issues, 80%. Mergers and acquisition, corporate lawyers, they all say corporate, tick mark and stuff like that. 80% of mergers and acquisitions, if you see, they are today 80% value terms, will be all around IP. Not that IP protected IP, but the kind of other one unprotected or whatever it is. So people have to learn something outside, and 10% at least time you spend on something completely different, unrelated to. That is how you develop to some extent, make people think out of the box. Now we are doing one more process, what we call think solo. Think creative, think innovative. I just give you an example on that. So we are developing a program. I say, okay, for 3 days you go anywhere within the program, but you are going alone. Nobody with you. Today we do not find a time for ourselves. For the whole world we find, but we don't find time for ourselves. Of course, second thing is family will say you don't find time for ourselves as well. But you need very quiet time yourself. So we are trying to put into place a process that will incur some expenditure, will give some hotel, these, that, other, but nobody from the firm will be around you. You find your own space. You go and sleep, no problem. This Blue Sky Thinking Center we are spending maybe about $8-10 million, right? But we say, okay, go and sleep for a whole week, I don't care. But you come back with one good idea. If you don't come back, then you lose your sleep. you know. So you have to really invest in, first of all, making people aware why creativity is important to an organization as a survival factor, not as just maintenance thing. I think this is some of the thoughts. In fact, one of the things we have done, some rolling slides will be there if you want to see that. We are looking at like solar board. You talked about solar, Ravi. You know, solar and wind turbine board. Because our offices are so expensive in Mumbai, I said, why can't we have office in board? But when we said board, then we think something different. So we got it designed in Germany, and I think that another thing you will see. But you have to sometimes spend something outside your own domain. And that makes people think that, you know, oh, this is not law, this is not tax. But why are you doing this? I said, because you need to think outside. These are some of the thoughts. I think, Weber, you had something. Ravi, you had something. I'm so excited that you don't care for food, but food for thought.
Yeah, we have to take questions over dinner. We also need food for thought with food for stomach.
I just have one story to tell you about Nishith. I went to his office the other day and I said, Nishith, how did you do it? How did you build this company? And he said, what's the most innovative thing you've done recently? So he said, see, when I send my bill out, there's a little thing on the bill saying, called happiness quotient. That here's our bill, and if you're happy with us, pay it. If you're completely unhappy or even slightly unhappy, don't pay anything. We just won't work together.
In fact, we won this award. One of the things that they took note of was our formal system of happiness billing.
But Nishith, you haven't heard the full story. I recently went for a very big corporation. They wanted me to come and give a big lecture on technology and social media and everything. And at the end of it, they said, how much will you charge? I said, well, here's what I'll charge, but just pay me whatever you are. If you're happy, if you're not happy, don't pay. So they said, okay. And I went, and I know it was successful because everybody came up with questions and everything. And then my accountant sent a bill, and they retorted, but he said we don't have to pay him anything. So, what works for you doesn't work for me.
No, you should have taken my advice before going there. I would have told you how to. See, people need to know generally what you're, like everybody knows we are more expensive. And I'm sure, first thing say, we love paying Nishith your fees. That's the basic mantra. If you don't love paying our fees, I think we differentiate between two types of clients. Clients who are able to pay but unwilling to pay. There are clients who are unable to pay but willing to pay. Second class is very welcome. First class, perhaps go home. But, you know, you really have to, it's all about psychology when you talk about fees and stuff like that. So, you know, you have to give some idea about what you think is appropriate, but at the same time, say that, you know, if you find value, you pay. If you don't find, okay, we take risk. It has direct relationship to our firm members' behavior, because if client is not happy, we will not be paid. And therefore, the member also has to think end-to-end solution. So we came up with this happiness billing policy, and the advantage of that, I'm sorry I'm going a little long, but to give you full scale, because everybody should know about our fees, right? But what we say is that, what is strategy? I'll finish with it. What is strategy? Strategy is a differentiation you create, which differentiation, even if known to others, cannot be copied. Now, if you come up with formal written policy happiness billing, right, it is very less likely. There will be some people who will copy that, no problem. I'm very happy, because if they are happy, I'm happy. My competitors should be happy. So, you know, how many people can easily copy that model? Little difficult. Okay. We have another policy. We never go for headhunting. Our people would always be, you know, people say, okay, we learn. Very few people will lose sometime, you know. But by and large, people have stayed because of passion. And I said headhunting, we are learning such bad words from the West, you know. What is headhunting? It's all Wild West. Because the headhunting, you hunt somebody's head, he's already dead, you bring dead body, you pay 25% more, boring stuff, right?
It's the story of Ganesha, though.
Anyway, so competitors are feeling very safe with us, because they know that when their people work with us, we'll not go and poach. Because Americans have taught all the headhunting, poaching, massacre on the street, all the jungle words. They are still growing up. Sorry.
We have American.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nishith, I just wanted to also acknowledge the work you are doing with Nasscom on various fronts, for the benefit of the entrepreneurial ecosystem and, the technology ecosystem as well. We're working with you all actively on so many different policy fronts.
So nice of you.
Vaibhav himself has volunteered lots of time, so thank you very much for that,
We do it because we love doing it.
Yeah, and, we can't afford your fees.
No problem. There is always a solution, don't worry. But I'm so grateful to you, all of you. I already casted my vote of thanks in the beginning. I know that most people don't wait until such time, vote of thanks, everybody walks out. So I thanked everybody. And if I may just present a small token to at least, it's discriminatory that all of you are speakers, but we are only giving to our honored guests. So thank you.
Thank you. It's your bills, right?
I know you don't wear it.
Say? Oh, it's a tie.
Oh, it is.
So
I think we will now adjourn. I think people still want to talk. Looks nobody leaves for lunch. Don't forget to take your package if you want to give it outside. If there is nothing personal, they will save for you. If it is personal, then make sure that you have your own bags. Thank you so much, and come back and use this place for dinner. Thank you.